podcast starts.
Hello everybody, welcome back to And Now the Podcast Starts. I'm TD Velasquez, but you can call me Dan, and here is my wonderful co-host,
Kirsty Warrow.
Hello Kirsty.
Hi.
How are you today?
I'm good, how are you?
Yeah, I'm alright. It's been an interesting week. It's been nice to have the podcast live. We've had some nice feedback. We've had listeners across the world, which is slightly terrifying. Hello, everybody.
Wow,
Thank you very much for listening.
Yeah, thank you.
It's good to speak to you again, Kirsty. How's your week been?
Good. I mean, yesterday we had no internet and no mobile phone signal for the afternoon. So that was the very definition of contemporary horror, I feel.
Right. Oh, dear, yeah, that sounds very frightening.
But it's back now, so that's good.
Oh, well, yeah, let's hope that situation remains the same. It's strange, isn't it? Whenever the internet cuts out, you feel like you've lost an arm. And it's annoying enough in normal times, but at the moment, when there's no guarantee that things like that could be fixed quickly, the idea of losing it is pretty petrifying. Oh, well,
yes.
So
yeah.
I'm very glad that you're back online, not least because it means I can speak to you.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good thing. We can do this. I was worried that we would not be able to do this when we scheduled, so that's...
Yes.
good.
No, that's great. So, today we have, hopefully, a nice treat for the listener, a special episode which I've been working on for literally years, all about the 1982 film Halloween 3, Season of the Witch.
Which I have not seen.
You've never seen Halloween 3?
No.
Wow, okay.
No, I'm not a huge Halloween fan. I think I've seen the first one. I might have seen a later one.
Right.
So, yeah. So, I mean, why, Dan? It's maybe a good question. Why? Because this is the third one? This is the third one, right?
It is the third film in the Halloween movie series, but it completely stands on its own. You could enjoy it as a viewer without having seen the previous two films. It's a self-contained narrative. Likewise, this podcast isn't the first discussion that Howard and I have recorded about a Halloween film. In 2018, we did upload to YouTube discussions about Halloween and Halloween 2. So this is the third of those. But again, it's an unconnected film, although if you had listened to the previous podcasts, you might get some continuity and context about some of the behind-the-scenes players who worked on all three of the movies and how we feel about their work. So therefore, if you do want to check out those, you can find them in the same place that you found this podcast. I've uploaded them to this podcast feed just this week, so you can listen to all three, or you can just listen to this one. It works either way. The reason we did record those podcasts back in 2018 was because in that year we just said to ourselves, we'll record episodes about every single Halloween film.
That seems like a Herculean task.
Yes, in a way I think maybe part of it was just to see if we could do it. Because that's like 10 films, then it's now 11 films. But I suppose the thing is, we're Halloween fans, Howard and I. We love that film, the original 1978 film, so much. And we didn't really think of ourselves as fans of the sequels. And in fact, in 2018, there's this new movie coming along which is pitching itself as a sequel only to the original. So in a way, we could disregard all the sequels. But I came to thinking that, well, actually, we've seen all the sequels. We've invested time and thought in all of them. So we are fans of the whole franchise, really. And also I was becoming aware that, each of those sequels, or some of them, have a devoted fan following of their own. So they deserve to be looked at in a fresh way. And I just wanted to explore that with Howard. And, we also got the help of a number of special guests who came to talk to us about them as well.
Was there a reason why it didn't, as in it doesn't fit in the kind of narrative world of the rest of them?
Halloween 3, well, basically, John Carpenter and Deborah Hill, who produced and wrote both of the previous movies, had creative control of Halloween 3, but they wanted to move the series in a different direction, so they hired a different writer and a different director to take over the movie and to craft a standalone, unconnected story which would be thematically connected to the earlier movies because it was still about Halloween, but it had no narrative connection to them. And the idea then would be that if that film was a success, every subsequent Halloween film would be a different standalone story on the theme of Halloween by a different writer and director team. Unfortunately, for reasons that we'll go into in the main discussion, Halloween 3 was not a huge success. So when subsequent sequels did eventually appear, they went back to the character of Michael Myers, who had been the focus of Halloween and Halloween 2, and in fact has remained the focus of every single film in the series ever since. But at the time of Halloween 3's production, there was a quite different vision for the potential future of the series.
So the idea at that point then was that Halloween would become like an anthology kind of series rather than, a franchise in a contemporary sense.
Yeah, exactly. And the later reviews that we recorded will also appear on this podcast feed as well, but at a later stage, because I think there is a new Halloween film coming out this year, or maybe next year now, as the release schedules of films have been completely disrupted, obviously, by the coronavirus situation.
Indeed, yeah.
But before that film comes out, hopefully we will add all of the reviews of the other 8, I think, Halloween films that we've not yet covered to this feed, so we'll kind of drip feed them as we go forward in time. And it's a really interesting film, Halloween 3, I think. It's a very flawed film, but it's fascinating in lots of ways, which is why we wanted to put extra effort into it. And so it wasn't just a discussion that Howard and I recorded. We did that with a couple of special guests. Spider Dan, presenter of the comic books and cult films podcast Spider Dan and the Secret Wars, and also the writer Steve Timms. Spider Dan and Steve were originally supposed to be on separate episodes. Spider Dan was just going to speak about the original Halloween, and Steve was just going to talk about Halloween 3, but they were both around on the same day, and we ended up having so much fun just chatting to them that they both got involved in both episodes. So we've got 2 discussions which are around 4 people. Although I do have to apologise because Spider Dan didn't really know much about Halloween 3. He had seen it, but not since he was a child, basically. So he couldn't contribute a lot to the discussion, but we just liked having him there. Spider Dan does come back in many of the later reviews in the series as well. But also, a friend of mine, Dave Moore, is an uber fan of this film, and he organised a special screening of it around the same time that we were doing the podcast.
Wow.
So I went to the screening, I interviewed a bunch of fans afterwards, and I also had a kind of one-on-one interview with Dave where he talks about his history with the film and why it was so interesting to him, and why he was driven to buy a ton of merchandise and collect posters and wear masks and all kinds of things.
I suppose from my perspective, though obviously, as I said, I've not seen the film, but I'm aware that, kind of Halloween 3, Season of the Witch, has this kind of cult status.
Increasingly so, yeah.
Yeah, it seems to have kind of undergone a bit of a reappraisal in kind of recent years. So, I'm going to obviously listen to the segment and maybe check it out.
Oh, nice one. Well, yeah, I mean, for people who've not seen the film, I would say that it's safe to listen to the first 20 minutes or so of our segment, but then we do go into increasing spoilers, because we just want to go into detail. In a way, I hope that this podcast has more detailed analysis of Halloween 3 than any other podcast ever, possibly any other media or any book ever, because I really went in depth on the research for it. And there are so many different contributors, all bringing kind of different perspectives to it, that I think we probably cover every aspect of the movie. But I'd like to hear from people if they think there's anything we don't mention that's interesting about the film. Also, there's a little video on our YouTube channel which visually shows you some of the people who are in the present at the screening, and you get to see a number of items from Dave's amazing collection as well. So it seemed like a good idea to do a little bit of visual accompaniment.
Fab.
So that's what we wanted to do, and that's what you're going to hear right now. So you and I will be back at the end of the episode, but for now, let's allow the listener to enjoy a great deal of enthused discussion about Halloween 3. We'll start off with a four-way discussion between myself, Howard, Steve, and Spider Dan. And it begins with Steve Timms just giving a little bit of background about himself and his connection to the film. Steve, would you like to tell us about...
A bit about me?
Yeah, just give us a little bit about yourself.
I suppose I'm a failed artist.
Aren't we all?
Enjoy the car.
Well, I'm a professional daydreamer who kind of writes film reviews for a website called Storgy. I've written plays and fiction and recently started making my own postcards, which I sell on Etsy. But I am a big film fan, you know, so... I think I should have been a film critic because I know so much about films. I'm just a mine of useless trivia.
That's what we want to hear.
I am old enough to actually have seen this film when it came out, which was probably 1983, but it was actually released. It wasn't released at Halloween, it was in the summer, it was like July or something, and I saw it in some older listeners might remember Studios 1 to 5 on Deansgate. It was this very sleazy cinema that you went down these steps and it was a bit grimy, and God knows what kind of activities went on there at late night. You know, it's probably now a pub somewhere on Deansgate, and it was like a basement cinema. It was on in there.
Okay, so Howard, how about yourself? How did you first see Halloween 3?
Well, to be honest, I can't remember. I suppose it would be on late night telly. I can't really remember how old I was. I don't think it made quite that big an impression on me as Halloween certainly did. I don't think I'm quite as enthusiastic about this film as other people might be.
Dan, I understand that you haven't seen this film in a long time.
No, I'm going to say maybe 15 years, possibly. My mum's boyfriend gave me basically a big bumper box of all the Halloween movies, and I kind of just made my way through them. He's a big fan. He has lots of horror tattoos. He's got Michael Myers on one shoulder, Pinhead on the other, you name it. Zombie Batman. He's an interesting guy. So he lent me them, and I kind of made my way through them all. And I remember him saying that I was like, Halloween 3 hasn't got Mike Myers. But he was like, no. Give it a try. And I remember watching it. I remember going, you know, it's not, you know, I remember it being quite kind of, you know, quite kind of schlocky, kind of, you know, there's a lot of kind of weird, you know, there's robots, witchcraft and masks, magic masks and stuff. And so it was very interesting and intriguing. And I remember enjoying it. I remember going, I'm glad I didn't skip over this. I mean, it's obviously very different from the initial Halloween saga, the Michael Myers thing and the shape and all that. But, you know, I still remember not hating it.
This is 1 year after the release of Halloween 2, which was a pretty big success. It was twice as expensive as the original. Its budget was $2.5 million, and its box office was $25 million. Wow. So it was nowhere near as profitable as the original, but it was still a very solid
success.
Capita said it one time that when the first film was so successful, the producers, who presumably he's meaning Erwin Yablans and Mustafa Akkad, who we didn't even hardly mention Mustafa Akkad in the original podcast, because he doesn't really have a creative involvement in the first film, but he is the financier. He is the guy that Erwin Yablans convinced to give him the paltry amount of money that was needed to make the movie. And apparently Akkad, who was producing kind of epic historical movies in Asia at the time, you know, he said at one point that, you know, $300,000 is what we spend each day on most of the movies that yeah. So he signed off on the budget for that movie. So it sounds like he and Yablans basically said to Carpenter and Hill, we're going to definitely do a sequel to Halloween. Yeah. And if you don't let us, we will sue you. So Carpenter and Hill made a counter-argument. Again, I'm not entirely sure of the facts of this, but I've heard this said there's slightly different versions of this. Yeah. But basically they said, okay, we'll do your Halloween 2 and Halloween 3, but the deal is we'll do the Halloween 2 that you want, but for Halloween 3 we want creative control and we'll do what we want. Right. So that was the deal that was made. So they always knew when doing Halloween 2 that there was going to be a Halloween 3, but it was going to be something completely different, which kind of explains why Halloween 2 was so definitively the end of the story.
Yes.
So they had complete control over 3. And he had been, as a kid, a huge fan of the early Hammer horror films, including the Quatermass movies, 1955's The Quatermass Experiment, 1957's Quatermass 2 particularly, which you can find elsewhere on YouTube. Me and Howard talking about in our enthusiastic way. And the writer of those movies, or the writer of the TV series that those movies were based on, the British writer Nigel Neal, was still around. And I think in the late 70s, possibly when in England promoting Assault on Precinct 13, Carpenter had got hold of the scripts because he could buy them; they were just published.
Yeah.
And he loved them. He realised that Neil was still working, he was still writing TV, and he basically contacted him and said, I would like you to write Halloween 3, but you can do your own thing as long as my idea is write something about witchcraft in the computer age. They brought Nigel Neal on board. Deborah Hill gave her blessing to this, and he went away and wrote a draft of the script. So Nigel Neal handed in his script, and Deborah Hill later described it as being too old-fashioned, and certainly it was not liked by the higher-up producers, and it's possibly Dino De Laurentiis who didn't get it and insisted that they put more violent things into it. And it's not actually clear if Nigel Neal ever saw the final film. Some people claim that he saw the final cut and hated it, so he asked him to take his name off it. Kim Newman actually reckons he never saw the movie. He just saw what they did to the script, and he said, okay, fine. The first draft was by Neil, then it was rewritten by John Carpenter, who is not credited either.
Okay.
And by the director, who was Tommy Lee Wallace.
But who is Tommy Lee Wallace? I don't really know.
Tommy Lee Wallace, he was the editor and production designer of Halloween. He's the guy who cut out William Shatner's eyes. Oh. And he was offered Halloween 2.
In the mask?
Yes.
Let's get that straight.
Yes. No accusations here. Yeah, and he was offered Halloween 2, but he didn't want to do it because he was clearly being asked to just fulfil a very specific brief, do a sequel to Halloween in the same style. He wanted to have something that he could bring his own creativity to, and that's what he did.
Did he make any more films after this?
Yeah, his most significant, culturally impactful project was that he directed the mini-series of Stephen King's It in 1990. Everything else that he's done is not supposed to be very good, and I haven't seen any of it. Like he did the sequel to John Carpenter's Vampires, and he did the sequel to Fright Night. But it is a memorable piece of work, and Halloween 3 is.
You happen to know anything about this Cochran?
All I can tell you, mister, is watch out. He's watching you, friend, I guarantee you that.
Trick or treat, trick or treat.
Hey, Mr. Cochran, just what is the final process?
Fellas, I was just kidding.
Witchcraft. To us, it was a way of controlling our environment.
Hey!
Where are they taking her?
They're taking her to the factory.
I want a mask. Can I have a mask?
Just what I had in mind for you, little buddy. Why, Cocker? Why? Do I need a reason?
I've got nothing here to indicate there was ever a body at all.
Operator, this is an emergency.
I do love a good joke, and this is the best ever. A joke on the children. I'm glad you'll be able to watch it.
You've got to believe me!
They're going to kill us. All of us.
Stop it!
Halloween. The world's going to change tonight, Doctor. Happy Halloween.
Stop it!
Halloween 3, Season of the Witch, the night no one comes home.
Season of the Witch.
As we did when we did our podcast about Halloween, I quoted from Halliwell's film guide to sum up the plot, and you can do that for this one as well. But whereas the plot of Halloween is so simple that you can kind of sum it up directly in a sentence.
Because surely you could sum up all the other Halloween films with that same sentence.
Well, yeah, but the sentence for this movie is quite different. Halliwell's summation was, A malicious toy maker intends to restore Halloween to its witch cult origins through magic masks made at his Santa Mira factory. And what I love about that is the great idea, but it's like the film could be anything from that. You know, it doesn't give you a plot; it gives you a kind of notion. How would you describe the story, Howard? As in, I mean, what I mean is not the idea, but like the narrative that the film takes you on. I mean, I assume that obviously most people listening to this will have probably seen it, but at the same time, maybe some people won't have, because I think it's the overlooked film in the series.
Yeah.
And maybe people who've like Halloween and Halloween 2 might not watch Halloween 3, but might be interested in it.
Well, no, I think you should watch it. I think it's interesting. I do think it's interesting. I think it's intriguing, and it starts well.
Yeah, the story starts with a man running. In a small Midwestern town, a man is running from strange business-suited killers who are pursuing him. He has a Halloween mask held in his hand, and he manages to evade the pursuers, but an injury causes him to be taken to a local hospital where, unfortunately, they later catch up with him and horrifically murder him. The doctor on duty that night is Dr. Dan Chalice, played by Tom Atkins, and he, together with the daughter of the deceased man, Ellie, played by Stacey Nelgin, investigates the murder, and their trail eventually leads them back to Santa Mira, the last town visited by Ellie's father. And this town is the home of Silver Shamrock Novelties, a famous toy factory. While they're in this town, the plot thickens. There are more of these sinister, besuited men around who we eventually start to believe are not entirely human. And we get to meet the mysterious founder of the Silver Shamrock organisation.
Well, it has actually a classic villain. One of the great villains, probably, of horror films is Cathal. What's he called?
Conal Cochran.
Conal Cochran. Played by a very well-respected, sadly deceased Irish actor called Dan O'Hurley, who probably most people will know because he was in RoboCop.
That probably is his biggest kind of modern film, I guess.
Yeah, but he was around from like the 50s, and he was actually Oscar nominated for playing Robinson Crusoe in a film directed by Louis Buñuel. He was in The Last Starfighter, I think.
Of course, Nick Castle's The Last Starfighter, bringing us another link to the franchise.
In Halloween 3, he's a toy manufacturer, a guy who invented sticky toilet paper.
Yes. That famous toy.
But now he makes masks, and he's got a very sinister agenda. And he kind of raises this film up because he's got an actor who's got a natural gravitas, and he is the reason why this film is good. I think he's just a great villain. Yeah, it's a film with great atmosphere, and it's a very slow build. The dramatic tension builds very slowly. When they get to the town of Santa Mira, you know, and they check into a hotel, and they're pretending to be Mr. and Mrs. Smith. You don't really know what's going on at this factory. You hear these sort of rumours about weird things going on there, and it's just a very, very engrossing story, really. And you hear a lot about the Coughlin before he actually appears, you know. So there's like this.
I love the bit
mystique that builds up around his character.
It's
and he controls his town, really. He's taken over the factory and brought all these people into work.
And everybody kind of loves him, which I think is quite eerie.
Well, everyone speaks about Coughlin and they'll be like fawning over his genius.
I love that moment where they're outside the motel, just talking to the guy, the motelier, or whatever is the word. He says, here's Mr. Cochran now. And you see that his limo with blacked out windows coming past very slowly, which I think whenever a car moves unnecessarily slowly in a film, it's a bad sign. But it's a lovely entrance, and you don't see Cochran, but you see his point of view.
I said Coughlin. It's Cochran, isn't it? Yeah.
Yes.
Coughlin has this fabulous speech, which you will probably remember.
I know it word for word.
But he talks about the idea that Halloween, like 3,000 years ago, it was something very different, and sort of children were sacrificed. But yeah, that speech, that is obviously very Nigel Neal.
That is from his original script.
Yeah, you get that impression.
As far as I'm aware.
But that is genuinely chilling that this Irish toy inventor is trying to. The planets are realigned, and somehow, I mean, that idea that he's stolen a piece of Stonehenge, and then it's a bit of a cop-out when it says, you'll never guess how we got it over here.
Well,
doesn't it go beyond and explain that?
I actually think that's the best line in the film, because it's, again, like the thing about how did Michael Myers drive a car. It's a great example of dropping, and also that wasn't in Nigel Neal's script, because his script had no Stonehenge connection. And we'll go into that in more detail later. But I think it's the best line in the film. It's like, we had a time getting it here. You wouldn't believe how we did it, and it's so great.
Well, Dan O'Hurley just sells that because he's so good.
I wonder if he wrote that line, to be honest, because it's so perfect
Well,
for the
did
character.
so many bits. I just love watching this film for his performance, like especially when he talks about special processing.
Yeah.
Oh, a bit of tweaking, a bit of this and that, a bit of the old magic.
Yeah. Oh, no, the bit where he puts the mask on a child's head and goes, there we are. You know,
it's a shame that actors who appear in the sort of genre films never really get recognition, do they?
That is true.
Yeah, definitely.
Yes, I think
it's such a great performance. You know, it's a classic villain, really. That's one of those performances that's not really been overlooked, which is a real shame, actually, because he's so good.
Because the movie's called Season of the Witch, some people have interpreted that Cochrane is the witch, and he's like, because he says, I remember what Halloween was like 2,000 years ago. Well, he didn't say he remembers, but he says he wants to bring it back. And so he's like 2,000 years old. He's like a 2,000-year-old witch, magic man. But on the other hand, you could just read it like Kim Newman does, which is that he comes from generations of like toy makers who have a connection to the kind of pagan history, and therefore you could possibly have stories and films about the previous Cochranes.
Yeah,
you know. And I think there's loads you could kind of explore there.
No, it's a great character, that, isn't it? So that's another reason to watch it. So.
Yeah.
What's your opinion of Tom Atkins as a leading man?
Well, I think he's good. And I think Howard and I will go into more detail on this, but he's always reminded me kind of pleasantly of Brian Donlevy in Quatermass films, which Nigel Neal hated his performance, but I think he was a solid lead. And Atkins is better than that. He's a really good actor, I think, and he's a genuine horror star. You know, he did lots of movies around that time, and I think and he's a member of the Carpenter Rep Company. You know, he was also in The Fog and Escape from New York, and he goes on to do movies like Night of the Creeps and Maniac Cop. And
also a weird film called The Ninth Configuration.
I've seen that, but I'd forgotten he was in it.
Heard of that.
Yeah, directed by William Peter Blatty, who obviously wrote The Exorcist.
Right,
yeah. Yeah, that's worth checking out.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, it really is, actually. I'd totally forgotten he was in it. But it's a very interesting film.
I must say, I do admire Tom Atkins in this film for getting off with a woman about 25 years his junior. I mean, he's
I think that's just Hollywood.
Yeah,
I think it's especially in Bond films. Anyway, that's mostly it.
I think we should acknowledge Tom Atkins does that in The Fog as well, and it's Jamie Lee Curtis in that movie. I do think Tom Atkins is a really interesting lead in the sense that yes, he picks up the young heroine and does an unconvincing romantic stud move in the movie, and the scene where they sleep together is the worst scene in the entire film. But apart from that, I think he's a pretty interesting hero. He's a blatant alcoholic. He's always drinking. Every single scene in the film, he's got a drink on the go. He's obviously a pretty terrible father. He's on the brink of divorce. In the first scene in the movie, you see him meeting his wife. Obviously, they're separated. She's got the kids. His wife's played by Nancy Loomis from Halloween.
All right.
Although under the name Nancy Kyes, I think.
Did she get married or something?
Well, she was married to Tommy Lee Wallace, who directed this film. But obviously, his name's not Kyes. I don't quite know. Maybe she just changed her stage name.
Yeah. It happens.
But yeah, so basically, she is the only actor who's on screen in the first 3 Halloween films. Although in Halloween 2, she just plays a corpse. But her voice is on the phone in Halloween 2, so you see and hear her in all the films. He's got an interesting face. He's pockmarked. He's got a kind of weight and a credibility to him, which I really like.
I think he's great. I think he's solid. He's kind of likeable. He's a proper. I think he's great in The Fog. I think he's terrific in The Fog. And I think he's great in this. He's like a Gene Hackman kind of everyman.
Yeah.
Character.
I've always appreciated his performances and things that I've seen him in. I think we were talking about Maniac Cop. I think he was in that. He was good in that, and he does have a kind of rugged. It's almost like a noirish feel he has. This kind of noir. Sam Spade kind of. When I see him in films, he's always kind of in that sort of vein, and the older kind of cop character. But I've always thought he was, he's very credible.
And he should be doing more. A few years ago, they were going to make a new Halloween 3, which would have been a sequel to the Rob Zombie Halloween 2.
Right.
And so it obviously was not going to be anything like this Halloween 3. But as a tip of the hat to the original, I believe there was a plan to give Tom Atkins a role.
Really? Nice.
But the movie was never made because the Dimension Films lost the rights to the Halloween franchise.
We still do stuff because he's in the remake of My Bloody Valentine.
Is he really?
He's the cop, which I only seen the first 5 minutes of, and that's enough. That's more than enough. But he is the cop.
I think Kim Newman says he is the cop in so many movies.
Yeah, he is the cop. He is the cop.
And has either of you seen Night of the Creeps?
No, but I want to.
I really want to, specifically because I know that Tom Atkins is in it and he gets this line: "The good news is your dates are here. The bad news is they're dead."
But it's good, and he's an old guy as well.
Yeah.
In a genre that was kind of dominated by teenagers at the time.
Yeah.
He's an older guy who comes in and saves the day.
And I think he feels like, this was the early 80s, the age of like Dr. Kildare, and he feels like a kind of more cynical, realistic take on that. The philandering, unreliable doctor.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a sequence in the hospital near the start of the film where he's obviously on shift and he's sleeping on a couch. And he hears a nurse screaming because the murder has just happened. And he kind of rouses himself and he just looks so knackered. He looks like a real doctor would look on a night
believable.
shift. And I love that sequence because even though this film is not directed by John Carpenter, it feels so John Carpenter. He's doing the music. It's still shot by Dean Cundy.
Yeah.
This sequence where the motel is surrounded by the robot guys, and they're all kind of lit from the back with a blue light, and they're all silhouetted. It looks amazing in a very 80s kind of way. And I love all that. And the sequence in the hospital where he wakes up and he runs to help the screaming nurse is all done in Steadicam. And it has this kind of woozy, I've just woken up kind of thing. And the camera follows him as he runs in sort of slow motion almost. And the music kind of builds up. And I just think it's fantastic. And that whole kind of style, to me, even though there's lots to criticise about it, I think I love it for two specific reasons. One of them is that it's Nigel Neal, whose work I appreciate, and although it's not the best example of his work, it's got his great ideas in it. And the other one is, I think it's basically a John Carpenter film, not directed by John Carpenter, but very much.
But it's got, again, like having Tom Atkins and Natalie Wood in it gives it that sort of John Carpenter feel to it. The black guy who works at the petrol station is played by an actor called Essex Smith.
Oh.
Which I think is...
That's a good name.
That's a good name.
That's a good name.
And in the old days, there was an old film star called Kent Smith. So there's a kind of...
It is a good name. Did you know Essex Smith's voice is also in the film in a different role?
He does the football games.
Yeah, that's right.
It's a very kind of unknown supporting cast in Halloween 3.
Yes,
nobody
it is.
seems to go on to anything else.
Yeah, and I think that's strange.
In Halloween 2, for instance, a couple of the actress Anna Alicia, she went on to do Falcon Crest and some things. Leo Rossi was in films like The Accused. So they're kind of like, they've gone on to things, but I don't know any of these people.
No.
I don't know from other John Carpenter. I don't know any other actors in it. Nobody seems to...
No, it's a strangely anonymous cast on that level.
Which in a way makes it slightly more unnerving.
Yeah.
You don't see any of these people again.
Yeah. So maybe there were
robots
all along.
Santa Mira does feel like going to a strange town that you never want to go back to. I do think I think one of the problems with the film, as Kim Newman pointed out in his book Nightmare Movies, is that they're obviously keen to pay homage to Invasion of the Body Snatchers, which is fine, but it doesn't really suit the film. It doesn't really suit the story. And for instance, why is an Irish-founded company town called Santa Mira?
Yeah.
Because that's the town in Body Snatchers. And also I think that the kind of the suited guys, suited robot guys, I think are probably from the fact that somebody thought, you know what, we haven't got Michael Myers in this, but we should probably put
yeah.
someone who's a bit like Michael. So we've got stalking, slow-moving man. And
that
actually,
can't be killed.
The lead robot guy in it, is played by the same actor, Dick Warlock, who played the Shape in Halloween 2. And he's a lovely man if you ever see an interview with him. He's got a really soft, unmenacing face. And he's the guy who like, pulls people's heads off and stuff in the movie.
Well, that's very disconcerting.
Well, it is disconcerting, absolutely.
It makes me think of like I think Michael Myers. One of the inspiration of Michael Myers was definitely like Westworld, the original kind of Westworld.
Yes,
with Yul Brynner.
Wonderful.
He's all garbed in kind of black, blue, and it's inspiration for the Terminator as well. I think, and this being that's stalking you slowly and can't be killed. I think there's definitely some inspiration there.
Yeah, like I said, it is intriguing. The beginning is good and everything, but for me, Dan Hurley's brilliant. Gives a good performance. Tom Atkins really good. Stacey Nelkin, who's the female lead, is really good. And there's some interesting moments and suspenseful things. But for me, there are just so many plot holes, especially towards the end, so many inconsistencies that it does affect, for me, the enjoyment of it. And by the end, you just get quite frustrated.
Yeah, I mean, I think there are things wrong with it. Actually, I mean, it's important to. I think this is a film that requires some suspension of disbelief, really. I mean,
yes,
a heavy dose of that, really. The main character, Dr. Chalice. I mean, he makes the easiest escape from a cell in the history of cinema. Actually, well, firstly, he's Coughlin's plan is to broadcast subliminal message on Halloween that will
melt children's heads.
Melt children's faces. Turn them into snakes and insects. So,
well, TV's been doing that for years.
Yeah, that's the sort of way has effects on
Channel 5.
Maybe there's a satirical comment by Nigel Neal there, actually.
But Dr. Chalice makes his escape. Firstly, he kicks in a TV set while he's sort of tied to a chair. I mean, if anyone attempts to kick in a TV set, you're going to break your foot, probably.
Yeah.
Then he
well, maybe not now. Maybe not now in the age of flat screens, but certainly
then
the tube
cathode TVs. Yeah. Then he somehow, he with his hands tied together, he gets the mask that he's been forced to wear. He flips it up in the air. It lands perfectly on a security camera.
Yes.
Then he effortlessly sort of severs these bonds that he's like some sort of superhero at this point, really.
No, I think you're completely right. I think I'm happy to give away in advance that I think the whole end of the film is it kind of goes off the rails. I think all the special stuff is earlier, and the things that stay with you and that are fascinating are all earlier in the film. The ending is just kind of a caper, ridiculous adventure nonsense, really.
Towards the end, Tom Atkins rescues what he thinks is Stacey Nelkin, the female lead, only she's been replaced by a robot.
Yeah.
Made by Dan Hurley. Very good robot.
Yeah.
Looks like.
Standard.
Yeah. And she, this robot, who presumably is being controlled or built by, for some reason, helps him to escape, helps him destroy all the robots, helps him to stop Dan Hurley's plan, and helps him to escape. And then when they're in the car later on, then she suddenly reveals she's a robot and attacks him. So you've got this massive plot hole just to have a kind of twist at the end where she turns on him.
Yeah.
And I think that's unfair, that's not right. You can't have that sort of thing just to have a kind of twist at the end, which have something which really makes no sense and just to have a kind of
it's just
twist. Who in Santa Mira is a robot? Who isn't? How many actual people are living there? How many actual robots?
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know whether the Irish guy who runs the motel is a robot or whether he's a real person or a woman they meet in an office. I know the guys in suits are because but I don't know. And do the human beings who live in Santa Mira know that these other people are robots? Do they know what?
I think like the holes in Halloween are purely because it's low budget and it's you might see a crew member pop his head over a hedge or a puff of smoke from John Carpenter's cigarette. Those things they're kind of charming in their way. But if you're talking about like it's structural, story based elements, plot holes. Those are big issues. They're a big problem. And a lot of my favourite films have those in abundance. But I still love them for the charm and the way they are.
I think the kind of plot holes you're talking about are the plot of most big budget movies have, to be honest.
Yeah.
I think all the Bond films have these kind of things. Like
the third act is quite famous in films for letting everything go.
Yeah, and specifically, like, I mean, to your point about Santa Mira and the Irish people, and whether it's like, are they real people or are they robots? If they're real people, do they know about Conal Cochrane's evil schemes, or do they think he's just a nice guy? If they know about the evil schemes, are they on his side? And are they
sentient at all?
Yeah, and all that stuff. But but at the same time, it's like it's exactly the same problem in the James Bond film Live and Let Die, where the bad guy rules an entire island with a quite similar name actually called San Monique, and they just don't really. They kind of hint at the idea that everybody on the island is part of his gang. Yeah. But so it's like, don't they have a society? How does the economy work? Yeah. But that's just kind of left, and you're not supposed to think about it. I think the reason it comes across as a bit worse in Halloween 3 is because although it's got a bigger budget than Halloween had, it's got the same budget as Halloween 2 had, which means that both films can afford to explode a car. This happens in both films. I think it's like a peacock.
That's the motif of all the films.
Yeah, it's like, look at our money, we're blowing up sedans. It seems worse because although it's got a bigger budget, it feels like it has a smaller budget because the plot is bigger. It's much, much bigger.
Yeah,
and
it's a grand scheme.
Yeah, and they haven't got the money to explore that. And in a way, that's what I was trying to get at when I said, when I read the Halliwell's description of the plot, you could read that description and imagine a huge movie. Whereas what you've got here is a movie about a woman's father gets killed in a strange way, and she goes with his doctor to investigate the town which he last went to where there's a spooky factory. Like Kim Newman said on the DVD, that's like an episode of The Avengers. Yeah. And I think it'd be a fun episode, and it is a fun movie.
Yeah. I kind of enjoy it. I did enjoy it. And certainly the fact that Michael Myers is not in it doesn't bother me at all.
No.
I'm glad. In fact, to me, it's a slightly wasted opportunity. It would have been great if they made a series of anthology films.
That'd be cool.
Film the different story and somehow incorporate
all set on Halloween.
I think Michael Myers' story had been told by the end of Halloween 2, when essentially he's dead and Donald Pleasance is dead. That kind of story was finished, and you can move on to something else. I just think it's a slightly wasted opportunity. I think it could have been better.
I think that the whole kind of idea of it, the evil scheme that the film is based around, is a fascinating, bizarre concept. And I can kind of understand why people who went along expecting something else, expecting a slasher movie or whatever, confronted with this bizarre concept, just kind of went, what the hell was that? But I think that if you didn't know that it was a sequel and you just watched it on its own terms, you might not like it, but you'd probably be more open to it being whatever it is.
I do think it's a very underrated film, which is perhaps not given enough credit, really.
Yes,
it's the one that's perhaps forgotten because it's obviously a thematic sequel.
Well, I don't understand, because this film is kind of hated by, in Leonard Maltin's film guide, which is usually quite fair about
it. Yeah, that's fair enough.
He described this film as genuinely repellent.
Right.
In a 1980s way, and there's gore galore. Now, I don't think either of those things are true. I don't think it's repellent, and I certainly don't think there's a lot of gore.
Well, it's funny. We talked about how Roger Ebert had given Halloween one of the first glowing reviews. He hated Halloween 3. He put it on his most hated films of the year list. Yeah. I think part of it is, like Steve, people had certain expectations, and it was so different to their expectations that they found it very distasteful. I do think it is also very violent, because in a slightly senseless way, because the violent moments they wanted to put into it to make it more horrific are not really necessary to the story and are kind of shockingly, strangely gross and involve children and things that I think people found that distasteful as well. I should also say, Howard, because I know you've recently rewatched it on DVD, there are several different cuts of the film. There's the version that you will have just recently seen, which is like the least violent version, which is the version that often gets on television. There's the kind of there's a media, and that's usually released on DVD with a 15 certificate, so you can tell that a mile off. There's the version that I saw initially, which was on VHS in the 90s, which is kind of an intermediate version, which you get a pretty good idea of how violent sequences are, but you don't see everything.
you don't see them.
And then there's the full version. I think these derive from the fact that different cuts of the film were released in different territories.
Right.
If you buy the Scream Factory Blu-ray, which came out a couple of years ago, it's got the full version on it. The bit near the beginning where the guy's in the hospital and the robot man comes and kills him in his bed and then sets fire to himself. There's definitely a version of that where you see the robot guy put his finger in the guy's eye and he pulls his head apart. It's really nasty. Whereas obviously other cuts of the film just imply what's happening.
So the cuts are they purely for violence? The cuts that have been made, not story elements or anything.
No, I don't think there are any
deleted scenes.
It's not like The Wicker Man or something.
Okay.
No, it's just.
So I assume the bit where the female scientist gets the drill, you see her get the drill.
No, I don't think you see that in any version, but it's still pretty nasty.
It's still really nasty, but it's not gory because you don't see it happen.
No.
It's a shame because if it had been successful, they probably would have made more one-off films, like an anthology series, and you wouldn't have had all the Michael Myers sequels.
So many popular anthologies, weren't there?
Yeah,
Like Tales from the Dark Side.
It was a thing that worked it on
Twilight Zone and all those kind of things. It would have been nice to see like a film version of that.
There was even like Freddy's Nightmares, the TV series, you know, and it's quite big in the 80s.
Creepshow,
Creepshow, which starred Tom Atkins, by the way.
There you go. Yeah.
Unbilled.
Yeah. But I think that could have been a really interesting, franchise.
Kim Newman said on one of the DVD commentaries of one of the films that instead of Halloween 1, Halloween 2, and Halloween 3, it would have been better if we had Halloween with the Fog and Halloween 3, and that would have been the kind of like anthology series. Because I love the Fog. The Fog is probably my favourite American horror film. I just think it's brilliant. And I kind of compare The Fog, which is directed by John Carpenter, to Halloween 3, and I just think it doesn't quite have the same atmosphere. It's very 80s. It's got that kind of 80s look about it.
Yeah, it does look very 80s.
Whereas Halloween is a very 70s film in its darkness, in its simplicity, in its license. Halloween 3 is, you said schlocky, and I think that's an appropriate word to use about it. Schlocky, pulpy, comic booky type thing. Perhaps I don't like things about witchcraft particularly either. It's not my favourite genre of.
I mean, there's not many films about witches, really.
Well, although I would argue that it's almost not really about witchcraft. I mean, they do use that word, and it's got the word
cybermancer or something. What do they call it?
But it's really, I think it's a weird science fiction thriller.
Oh yeah, no, it's a science fiction film.
Yeah.
The more I think about it, the more it kind of it makes me think of like we're saying pulpy, schlocky, comic booky kind of thing. It makes me think of Dr. Doom from the Fantastic Four. He's known for being crazy, but he's also very much in control. He's like you guys were saying that he's kind of one with the people. It's kind of creepy, has this influence over them, and also that he, Dr. Doom is known for mixing sorcery with science, and that sounds exactly kind of this. And the more I think about it, the more I'm like, oh yeah, I remember bits of it, and it does it brings that kind of that supervillain schlock to it.
Yeah, and again, that's very Nigel Neal. I think Danny Peary in the book Cult Movies described Nigel Neal as the first Britisher to mix elements of science fiction with horror, because he was doing that in 1953, and. A lot of his best things are kind of ghost stories in which he goes into, like the Stone Tape, 1972's The Stone Tape, which is a brilliant BBC play, is a scientific investigation of a haunting in which characters are able to scientifically define what haunting is. Yeah. But it's still a scary story. He's got a funny way of being able to do that, like kind of make the supernatural more credible, but without making it less frightening. We should talk a little bit about Nigel Neal to kind of give more context. So many of his previous and subsequent works are kind of wonderful touchstones of science fiction and horror. And weirdly, because in a way his work is not that well known in America, because although he wrote this film and he was involved in writing a remake of The Creature from the Black Lagoon around the same time, he knew people like John Landis and Joe Dante. He didn't have a very good time in Hollywood. And he quickly abandoned all that and just came back. I think the last thing he was credited on in his lifetime was probably an episode of Sharp. He wrote an episode of Sharp.
Bastard.
He wrote an episode, and I thought it was so bizarre, of a series called Cavanagh QC.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
And it was about a guy who was accused of being a Nazi war criminal.
Oh, okay.
And I saw his name up. It's in my head, I thought it was going to be some kind of supernatural or something going on. But it was,
it's
actually very, very serious. It's on the story about a guy who was being accused of being a Nazi, and he was at the end.
Well, that would have been a consequence of the fact that Cavanagh QC was made by producer Ted Charles and Central Television, who also made Inspector Morse. But crucially, they'd worked with Neil. They also made Sharp. They made The Woman in Black, which Neil wrote in 1989, and they made the final Quatermass series in 1979. So it was kind of a long-standing relationship. So I think he just possibly just liked working with them and was like, yes, I'll write your lawyer program, whatever.
Well, it wasn't unknown. For instance, an episode of Inspector Morse was written by a very famous playwright called Peter Nichols, who wrote The Day Death of Joanne.
Oh, right. Okay.
Just one episode. And Malcolm Bradbury, who's famous son, used to write episodes of Touch of Frost. So it wasn't that much of a come down. It wasn't a come down at all for somebody to write an episode of Morse kind of made writing episode of detective series kind of sort of kudos.
Bradbury wrote for that as well, and of course Anthony Minghella was the first writer of Morse, and lots of great writers. And I think that again that was Central Television. I think Ted Childs, who had produced The Sweeney in the 70s, was very much a part of kind of raising the quality threshold of TV and the expectation and the kind of status of it, really. It's said on the DVD commentary of Halloween 3 by Kim Newman that possibly the idea for the movie was derived from Nigel Neal's unmade 60s or 70s TV concept, which he did called The Big Giggle, which is a great title. Which was it was something to do with it was a 6-part script, and he wrote the whole script. He was commissioned to do it, but then the BBC or whoever it was read it and said, actually, we can't do this. And it was all about a TV program that convinces teenagers to kill themselves or something. Or maybe
just put on Love Island. I mean, that convinced me.
And it might have been derived from that. I think also. The fourth Quatermass series, which Neil wrote in about 1972, but which was made in 79, is all about young people, children and teenagers being drawn by a mysterious force to go and visit ancient sites like Stonehenge.
Okay.
And when they go and gather in great numbers there, this kind of astral force comes to meet them, and they think they're being transported to heaven or somewhere else. But they're actually being killed. Yeah. And I think it's quite similar to the basic concept of Halloween 3. And in fact, obviously, in the movie Halloween 3, the power that comes through television, which Conal Cochran is using, is derived from a Stonehenge monolith. But that wasn't in Nigel Neal's script. That was something that they added in the rewrites after he left the project. But obviously, I think maybe Beverly thought this is the kind of thing he'd do. But I do think that one of the interesting things about Neil as a writer is that he has this very black sense of humour, and it's a very adult sense of humour, and he's frequently very cruel to young people and children.
Well, I thought that watching Quatermass, I haven't seen Quatermass, the fourth one, Quatermass Conclusion it was called.
When it was released at the cinema, it was called Quatermass.
The John Mills Quatermass.
Yeah.
When I watched that a few years ago, I think it was repeated on one of them, I thought, this guy doesn't like young people very much. He's portraying them all as being rather simple and hippie-ish and self-indulgent and kind of... and there was a certain reactionary element to it, which I didn't quite like. All the young people saving the day and all the young people, the food they should themselves get killed.
Yeah. Although I do think of the fact that he does horrible things to various kinds of people in his stuff, but I think he's always giggling about it a little bit, in the sense that, I mean, for instance, I think earlier in his career he was asked to write for Doctor Who when it was quite new, and he flatly refused. A, because he didn't like it, and B, because he said, it's blatantly irresponsible and wrong to write essentially horror for children, and because you're upsetting children. So he saw his stuff as being for adults, but he obviously thought it was totally fine to be horrible to children in an adult context, not in real life. And I think, so therefore he writes, it's like he's writing the most horrible things that could happen to people.
But it's fiction.
Yeah, it's fiction.
Yeah.
Let's have a laugh.
Yeah.
That's
never happen in real life.
And the black humour in Halloween 3 that comes through the most is obviously the stuff about the fact that Conal Cochran is supposed to be a practical joker who's invented these horrible jokes. He was the man who invented sticky toilet paper, they say at one point, and the dead dwarf gag, you know.
I'd like to see that one.
Will they keep that for the remake?
I hope so. You know, so... Yeah, so I mean, I think it's a really interesting body of work, and I do think it kind of sits within it, and I think it's I kind of like to not just to read that original script, but it would be... There's lots in it, lots of ideas and moods and notions which I think could be explored so much more. That's why I wish in a way they'd done it with a massive budget. I kind of feel slightly annoyed that, like, Halloween 2 had a massive budget compared to Halloween 1, but Halloween 3 didn't have a big budget, and Halloween 2 it had the same budget, but it needed a bigger budget, and they should have treated it like a proper, like, you know, can you imagine if it was made on the scale of something from the 70s, like the Andromeda Strain, or one of those big, stark sci-fi movies.
I know. Recently, going back to comic books, I know recently that they've taken on. I'll take the tangent, but recently they're producing the unused script for Alien 3 and they're making it into a comic book.
Oh yes,
can kind of see, you know, if we can like what the film that would have been, because like I did a documentary for Nerdify. I don't think you can get the podcast anymore, but that was a podcast I used to be a part of, and we were saying that like I ultimately said there was a good film in there, but because of all the problems, it didn't come out. But even John Carpenter's helped produce some comic books recently as kind of sequels to the original. So they've done Big Trouble in Little China, they've done a series on that, and John Carpenter's involved. They've done Escape from New York as well, and he's involved in the writing, the producing.
They did The Thing, didn't they? That was a while ago.
Yeah, a while back. I think they did as well.
I've heard very good things about
they've
those.
done a crossover between, weirdly, Big Trouble in Little China and Escape from New York, so they're like so Kurt Russell just looking at himself pretty much. But I think they're Boom Studios, I think they're called. I think that's where they're from. But yeah, John Carpenter's, he gives it his blessing and helped, you know, generate the idea. I don't know if he's fully writing it still, or had. I think he just kind of was like, where do you want to go? This is what I would do. And the writer's gone, yeah, I'll do that.
I think at one point they were going to do a third Escape story, Snake Plissken story.
Yeah.
But Deborah Hill was involved with commissioning the writer for the comic book, and then she died. She died in 2005, so I think that kind of obviously ended the project. But no, maybe we should phone up those guys and say, can you do a graphic novel of the original Halloween 3? That'd be really interesting.
Please do.
Something you mentioned in our podcast about Halloween, Steve, was how much you loved the score for this movie, which is by John Carpenter and Alan Howarth. Weirdly, it's the only movie they worked together where the credit says music by John Carpenter and Alan Howarth, not music by John Carpenter in association with Alan Howarth. Apparently it was very much a collaboration. I do think it's a great, weird score.
I think it's one of the scores you could listen to it's almost like an ambient soundtrack, really, like something you could listen to at home on your own and just kind of become very immersed in it, because it's very sort of low-key, it's very, not mellow as such, but it's quite immersive music that would probably stand up on its own, I think. Apart from the silver shamrock jingle, which is sort of horribly annoying.
But intentionally so, I think, you know.
Yeah.
Happy, happy Halloween, 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 happy, happy Halloween, silver shamrock.
I think you compared Carpenter's music to Boards of Canada. A few years ago, I was involved in a stage version of Nigel Neal's play Wine of India, and I actually used Boards of Canada music on that because it had that kind of strangely hypnotic, all-pervasive atmosphere, which is the kind of thing that a lot of Neal's work hints at, and that I certainly think is carried in the score of Halloween 3.
One of their albums is called Tomorrow's Harvest, which is a vaguely sort of sinister connotation, I think.
There's a pagan kind of thing to it. Yeah. Oh, really nice. No, it's a wonderful soundtrack.
So I did actually have the album of this on vinyl. which I bought from, I think, Yanks Records off Oxford Road. I don't know if anyone remembers Yanks Records.
No.
They used to stock like loads of cheap albums, and all the albums had the corners cut off the sleeves for some strange reason. But I had the soundtrack of that, and sadly don't have it anymore, but it's fabulous music, it really is.
No, I've listened to it a lot. I really like it. One of the tunes is called Chariots of Pumpkins. And I can't think why it is, except that this was the year after Chariots of Fire came out, and they were probably just taking the mickey. So, I think we've covered everything that we can say about Halloween 3, really, unless you've got anything you'd like to add, Harry?
No, I was going to say that, just adding to what you said about Nigel Neal. For me, his stuff is very British.
Yes.
There's like very British restraint to it, and reserve to it, and things he does. And transposing that to an American situation, perhaps that's the problem with it.
The disconnect.
There's some kind of some bad word for me.
Yeah, I think that's
interesting. Quatermass is brilliant, Quatermass. Quatermass is a very British sort of hero character, and to people he's up against the various military people, whatever. It's British institutions that Nigel Neal is sort of...
It's good at poking fun at and transforming.
And it doesn't work in an American milieu.
Maybe not. Well,
the mise en scene.
Body to do.
I think for the first sort of 90 minutes it is a really original film. It's the last... the sort of the last act just becomes very formulaic, but like I said, I would forgive it for that, just for its originality.
Dan, I think we said at the start of the podcast maybe this will convince you to revisit the film. Do you think you will?
I think so. Yeah, I think I'd like. We've discussed it in quite in depth, so I would like to kind of go back and think, like where do you get your opinions from and Howard's opinions from, and I want to kind of because I'm only half remembering it now. But the more we talk about it, the more like, yeah, I do remember that, I do remember this and that. But I would like to see it in its whole entirety and kind of give it a good watch. So yeah, definitely.
Nice one. Well, there we conclude Howard's and my ruminations on Halloween 3 in our usual style. Many thanks to Spider Dan, the ever spectacular, and also Steve Timms for their very important contributions there. Now it's time for us to go over to the recording that we made at the special fan screening of Halloween 3 in Bury, Lancashire in August 2018. There we'll be joined by an intrepid group of fans who've just rewatched the uncut version of the film and want to share their thoughts. But before that, here's my brief chat with the organiser of the event, Dave Moore, uber Halloween 3 fan, who explains his long-time obsession with the movie and his great collection of memorabilia. So, Dave, it's been your inspiration for us to screen Halloween 3 today and to enjoy your amazing collection of memorabilia and knowledge about the movie. Why don't you tell us a little bit about how you came to be such a fan of the film and came to know so much about it?
Well, I think I got well into films when I was maybe 9 or 10, so you're talking this is 86, 87, 88, 89. I used to have a little TV in my bedroom, and I was only allowed to watch telly up until 9 o'clock, but I was, I'd love my films. We always had a Halliwell's film book in the house. I think they were like 1970s editions, and, I'd memorised them basically. I read them from page to page. So whenever a film came up that was on the TV, I'd try and watch it, but I wasn't allowed to watch films after 9. So I've never even told my parents this now to this day. But what I used to do was just lie on my bed with watching films at the horror film was 10, 11 at night with my hand on the volume dial, which is also the off switch. So I'd need to sort of I'd watch an hour of the film, the whole film with my hand on that dial, and as soon as my door would go, I could hear them coming in to check is Dave asleep. It'd be twiddle the dial.
Right.
Play sort of dead, play asleep, wait for them to go. So I watched lots of films in that method,
This sounds
in
very
that manner.
Familiar to me. Yeah.
And one of them was Halloween 3.
Right.
And I was just always intrigued by the film. And I loved everything about it, from certainly the soundtrack. I was always, even as a young kid, mad on the Carpenter scores. I think I just happened to find out one day that, hold on a minute, there's all these films. Christine, which we loved, that was the first film we ever recorded with a video. When we got a video recorder, the first film we ever had recorded off the telly was Christine. Right. So as you can imagine, it got watched over and over and over again. And we loved me and my dad, who was into lots of synthesised scores. He liked the Giorgio Moroder films. He liked, we loved the Blade Runner, the Vangelis kind of stuff. And we were like, oh, Christine's got a great soundtrack, hasn't it? Yeah. And then I found there's this Halloween 3, and it sounded very similar sort of sound. Loved that. And then there was The Thing. As another film I watched with my hand on on this little volume knob. That had a great score as well. Of course, it was a Carpenter film, but not a Carpenter soundtrack. It was a Morricone soundtrack, wasn't it? And
that's right.
And,
but with
and
Carpenter editions.
Another one which was Assault on Precinct 13, which me and my dad loved, and that had that fantastic minimalist, Carpenter score again. And then we just realised, hold on a minute, all these films with the scores we love, they're all John Carpenter. I don't think we'd realised until we'd watched about 5 of them. Yeah, so anyway, loved everything about Halloween 3. The atmosphere, it's how low-key it was. Because even as a young kid, I was watching like some of these Friday the 13th sequels, and it was just teenagers getting. It was clearly aimed at the teenage market.
There aren't really any teenage characters in Halloween 3, are there?
That's exactly why I liked it, because it was adults. Another thing that's interesting is I suppose I saw Halloween 3 before I was aware of Halloween's existence. I watched it before 1 and 2, so I wasn't aware of Myers.
Could you just give us a quick talk through the kind of merchandise that you've got? You've got a whole range of things. You've got the original novelisations of the film in both, I think, British and American copies, is that right?
It was a long time ago when I got these. It was probably around, I always had a soft spot for Halloween 3, but I probably had a proper period of obsession around sort of early 2000s to like 2005, 2006. So most of this stuff was picked up around then. I can see there's an extended soundtrack there.
The limited edition soundtrack.
Yeah.
And of course you must tell us a little about the masks, the Don Post masks.
Well, I think the skull mask is a Don Post mask, but it's a repro. I don't know when I picked that up. That was actually quite recently, over the last 4 or 5 years. So it's the Trick or Treat Studios repros for the Witch and the Pumpkin. Of course, the skull and the Witch were originally 70s Don Post masks, on their existing catalogue, and then I think Carpenter and Hill commissioned Don Post to produce the Pumpkin, the jack-o'-lantern mask, for the film, didn't they? So
I believe so, yeah.
It's just a shame I've got such a big head and I can't fit into the Pumpkin. I can wear the Witch and I can wear the skull, but yeah. Well, there are a couple of Fangorias there. When's that? I'm not sure what edition it is, but there's a Halloween 3 on the cover, an October 82 Fangoria, I'm guessing.
That's a great cover, the latest thrill from Carpenter Hill. I love that.
And there's another one with Evil Dead on the cover.
It's got a shot of the most gruesome scene in the film.
Yeah.
Right on the front cover. Welcome to this special screening of Halloween 3, which has been very kindly arranged by our friend Dave in this marvellous setting. These are the Intrepid team who've just had the pleasure of watching the uncut version of Halloween 3 on the big screen. And we thought we'd have a little discussion about everyone's reactions to the movie.
Okay, hi, I'm Gemma. I first saw this film probably when I was about 13, and then I've just seen it again now, and it's very nostalgic for me. I've really enjoyed it, and I've had a really good time watching it today. I just think it's a really great film.
Hi, my name's Dan. I'm a massive horror fan, long-time Carpenter fanboy, and yeah, big fan of the Halloween franchise.
My name's Peter Slater. I'm an actor, writer, a comedian, and I'm a fan of Halloween 3 Season of the Witch. Saw it when I was, about 10 years old, and I've always loved the film.
Hello, I'm Steve Kame. I'm an actor, sketch writer, performer, comics enthusiast, film enthusiast. This was my first viewing of Halloween 3 Season of the Witch. First exposure to it was my mum describing it to me when she saw it some time in Christmas 1986.
Oh, hi, I'm Gareth. I'm a theatre producer arcade machine enthusiast and big Carpenter fan like everyone here, I guess. A particular fan of Halloween 3, the best of the lot. For me, Halloween 3 is one of those classic 80s films that has a second life on video, where it comes and goes on the cinema. I don't even remember it appearing in our Flambeau Palladium or any of the posters. But I do remember the book. I definitely remember seeing the book in the shops. I probably bought and read that, but it was a video for me. And it was a 15, which meant that, you know, you could probably hire it as 11 or 12-year-old. It was usually okay.
When I first watched this film many, many years ago, it confused the hell out of me because obviously I'd seen Halloween 1 and 2 and was a huge fan. And then, as most people that came to Halloween 3, you discovered this VHS and you watched it, and it was almost a confusing experience because it's not a Halloween film. I mean, it is, you know, years later you'd realise it's because they had this anthology idea, and so they were trying to spin out the franchise, but because there was no Michael Myers, it was kind of like, I'm not really sure what's going on. You were kind of waiting for that penny to drop, and it never did. But watching it years later, you realise that it's actually a really great film in its own right. I mean, it obviously stated in many ways, but it's a very tight film. Like, there's not a lot of scenes in it that every scene that's in it moves the plot forward. So there's not a lot of fat on it, which I think is great about it. When I first came tonight, I was expecting to be a hokey, but I think it holds up really well.
Oh, nice one. How about you, Gemma?
I really enjoyed it. I mean, I think I first saw it when I was about 13, something like that. But the first bit that I heard about it was when my dad used to sing it all the time when I was little. And I never made the association with it until I actually watched it. But he still sings it now, every now and again. But I think it's great. I mean, it's just on its own film. It's because obviously I like the Michael Myers ones, but this one's just totally different, and I really enjoy it, and I think it's great.
For my part, I discovered this movie on VHS in the 90s. I already knew a fair amount about it because of being a fan of the original writer Nigel Neal, and I'd read a disparaging 1996 interview with him in SFX magazine, where they asked him what had happened with that and why he took his name off it. And I believe his quote was, because I read this interview a lot and most of it's burned into my brain, he said there was a tremendous amount in that script.
They shrunk it right down and filled it with things like people's heads being drilled. Awful, crappy stuff like that.
Which was a typical Nigel Neal comment.
I don't think it's unfair, actually. I think that is what has happened to that movie. I think there's lots of sequences and people who are just there to be graphically killed, like the tramp and the pathologist. And yeah, that's right, all the meaty stuff with the Stonehenge and all that feels very Nigel Neal, but it is probably, 20 minutes worth of stuff?
Well, the director was in a Q&A a couple of years ago where he claims that about 60% of the movie is from Nigel Neal's script. And actually, Stonehenge is not part of it. They added Stonehenge after he left the project.
Really?
Yeah, but they might. I think
they must have had the glowing rock though.
Well, they obviously had something in the masks.
Despite, all of Neal's complaints, that's still a Nigel Neal film. It's got that. When we did, it feels like from the same guy who wrote Wine of India, which of course we did as a stage play many years ago. He clearly, there's a lot of sympathy there for Cochrane, the villain. He treats him quite sympathetically. You can almost imagine him thinking, yeah, he's all right. He's going to wipe the world out of these horrible little bastards and set the clock back to a nice time where we just sacrifice the odd goat. And it's got I haven't really appreciated the very strong anti-capitalist message in there that he's using all these marvellous new tools of the age, the mass marketing, the frenzy, the hype, the TV, to get everyone around the box and kill them. So I thought that was really good, and it felt like his film. And yeah, all those things he's bothered about, like overpopulation. There's a line, I think, where he says this is about us taking back control of our environment, which I take is going back to simpler pagan times, but also disposing of 98% of the population as well, which is a very Nigel Neal concern. I thought it was very good, but I thought there was quite a bit of flab, though. To be fair, I thought the opening the opening I didn't need. I could have almost just had him run into the petrol station at the beginning and go, "Ooh, we were all going to die," and that would have been enough. And the pathologist, I think, could have disappeared, and we'd have lost nothing. The tramp could have disappeared. We need the family, I suppose, that lovely hoaxy family, just to show how horrible it is.
Apparently they do come straight out of Nigel Neal's original script,
so
almost unchanged.
So yeah, it's great. I enjoyed it as ever. The score is fantastic. It's I think it's a surprisingly modern piece. So yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Still love it.
It's interesting that you think that, in a way, Conal Cochrane is quite a sympathetic villain, because a lot of people read into that movie that Nigel Neal hated the Irish.
But he's a Celtic man from the Isle of Man, isn't he? And
yes.
I think, he wouldn't have. It's interesting. He says Celtic and not Irish. Throughout, he talks about the old world and Celtic, which is Neil and the Isle of Man. Although we all take the piss because of the Fast Show in the 90s, that it's a slightly backward place. I'd imagine it's a deeply spiritual and pagan and a very a sort of an elsewhere place. A bit more. So yeah. I think he's just Irish as a default. I think maybe if he'd made it for British TV, it'd have been a Manxman.
Oh, I see what you mean. All right, that's interesting. And apparently it was based on an idea that Neil had for a BBC TV show that was rejected in the mid-70s.
Never wasted.
And he dug it up when they approached him to write Halloween 3. Steve,
yeah,
how did you enjoy the show tonight?
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. My first memory of it, Halloween Free was an entry in Radio Times in the late 80s when I was a little boy, and I wanted to stay up and watch it. My mum said, "No, you're not," and sent me to bed. I was supposed to be 8 or 9 years old at the time, and then as a little boy, I had this real surreal memory. A little boy climbing into bed with mum going, "Did you watch the film last night?" And my mum giving me a blow-by-blow description of the film, telling me about these masks that kill children and the Halloween thing, and I never saw it. I always meant to see it, but people told me it was rubbish, and I as a teenager watched the first Halloween and was enthralled by it and fantastic, and I was a bit of a film snob, and I thought, Halloween theme's going to be rubbish, I'm not going to watch this again, so I forgot about it. Recent times people have told me it's really, really good and it's underrated. I watched it when I watched it today. Enjoyed the hook. I thought some things had dated very badly.
Just a second. So was today your first ever
My
viewing?
first time I've watched
right?
it. Yeah. First time I've watched it.
Wow.
So yeah, it was fantastic. But the things I had dated, like sexual politics, like the main guy grabbing acid quite casually, and the kind of love story seemed a bit tacked on. There was no build up to that at all. To me at all.
I've always suspected that the exchange of dialogue, "Where do you want to sleep, Dr. Chalice?" That's a dumb question, Miss Grimbridge. Was possibly not written by Nigel Neal, but I
didn't think so.
I could be wrong.
I didn't think so.
He sleeps in the car in Nigel Neal's draft. There's no shagging in a Neil script.
If made
apart from the Year of the Sex Olympics.
If made now, there'd probably been some build-up. But the performances were great. I like Tom Atkins. He's a fantastic character. And I like he was a bit of a schlub. He was finally sketched as well. You could see where he was. He was this medic, but who was divorced from his wife and basically had a massive drinking problem. Was a bit of a pleasure seeker, and he was a little bit of an impotent as a protagonist. He didn't quite have the power to take on the CEO. Dan, what's his name? Dan
O'Hurley.
Hurley, right, so that was right. Was fantastic as well. He reminded me a lot of Jervis Tetch, Batman, the CEO. It was quite kindly a grandfatherly that wanted to, go back to old times. I like that, the whole Samhain thing.
Where's that character from, Jervis
Tetch? You know the Mad Hatter?
In Batman?
In Batman, there's a villain called the Mad Hatter who controls people with hats, the whole mechanical controls of personality.
Oh, okay.
So that reminded me a little of Jervis Tetch.
Right.
The Mad Hatter from Batman. I love the little prototype Wi-Fi technology that we have. Everything's got a Wi-Fi chip in it now, so it's made now to be quite current. And apart from hokey bits, it was a very solid horror film, and it was a great.
Nice one. I'm really glad that we got someone here who's never seen it before and a fresh reaction. How about you then, Peter? I know you're a fan of this movie.
Yeah, I'm similar to Gareth. I think I saw it probably mid-80s. I think I discovered it on video on TV one night. and the appeal for me was knowing that. I mean, there's a lot of elements. John Carpenter was still involved. He did the music, he produced it. Tom Atkins, who I really rate as an actor. And it was interesting because when I saw it, it was just like, oh, where's Michael Myers? But that quickly wasn't a problem because it's a really good film in its own right. And it was great watching it again tonight because on a big screen, so I know it's not small, and it looked fantastic. There's some of the shots in it are lovely because I think is it Dean Cundy who's the director of photography. I mean, he's done a lot of stuff with Carpenter, and again, it's really well put together. Yeah, there's a few things where you're laughing at it for all the wrong reasons, but as a whole, it's just an entertainment, piece, and it's interesting because you've got all these different elements. So you've got, there's a bit of cheesiness, there's intellectual levels there, but somehow it all for me it all works. And on that there was this piece of entertainment. It's not all out. It's not a gory horror out tonight. There's a few moments where a lot of other films of that time, because I remember this came out 82, so the slasher films were still big then, and they were really on the ultra. The sell for them was, we're going to show you, different ways of killing people, which I think is a big thing what's still going on now, and that doesn't really interest me. What was great about this, what held my attention, was you've got a good characters and a great story, and it was a really pleasant surprise. It was just unfortunate that when it was marketed, it was like people, I guess, were expecting Michael Myers. And when that didn't transpire, I think it just got probably a lot of, at the time, bad reviews. I'm not sure just because of that, or they were expecting more, or I think over the years it's been like kind of either rediscovered and rightly so, because it's just a great horror flick with sci-fi elements.
Yeah, I mean, I think
Just sums it up.
Absolutely, bit of the spirit of Siskel and Ebert there. Speaking of which, Roger Ebert hated it. He said it was one of his 10 worst films of the year.
What was he watching? But based on what though? It's interesting just to see at the time, because this always gets me sometimes with critics. It's like it's like a film like that. It's like saying it, but it's not trying to do. What's the message? It is what it is. So if you can't see, an entertainment value in that, so we'd be looking at that saying, well, why is it? And then, anyway.
I think there are two things that turned people against it at the time. One was the Halloween fans who wanted Halloween 3 that was like the previous films and had Michael Myers in it. And the other thing was the level of, like you say, it's not a very violent film, but it obviously does have a couple of really gruesome moments. And I think that people couldn't deal with it, especially the fact that it kills children.
There's that in it. Yeah,
that's very uncommercial. That's right.
But it's not. It's implied, isn't it? As well. I mean, I think there's one child who definitely dies in it, and then it's that implication of like what's gonna kind of come as well.
But that is because the whole plot of the film turns on a plan to kill loads of children, which you can imagine kind of Nigel Neal laughing about that as he's writing it. Maybe there's a slight assumption that all assholes hate children or something. I don't know.
One thing that did occur to me watching that is that between them they've made the perfect big Doctor Who big budget episode on the screen. It is only missing the Doctor. Everything about that is a Doctor Who episode, apart from the ending being black as night. So but that would work perfectly as a 90s Doctor Who story.
It's simple. Forget the protagonist is a Doctor.
Dr. Chalice Who.
He's a great Doctor Who villain, Cochrane.
There's an evil plot, an evil base.
The Bond villain.
It's Bond-esque, and also the Avengers.
We've got Autons in it. In fact, it is a big budget remake of Alan Moore's Business as Usual.
I think for the time as well, when you think in this day and age, like when they were going into this town in the factory where the masks are being made, and they've got all the cameras. I mean, that's the norm now. We're being watched all the time, and then it's like with the mask, that idea of like you put these masks on, you watch this at a certain time. This idea of like with the brainwashing, like the general public, watch this could happen. You're talking about, I think you mentioned Nigel Neal about the overpopulation. That's a big issue now, governments, how they're going to handle it. They will never tell you directly, but I tell you what, maybe they could put something in the television, send out a message where you don't know we could be watching something, send a thing, bang, is that killed today? No, I think it taps into an interesting thing with the mass. It's really frightening.
Because it's in the adverts, I mean, this wasn't a thing for me, but Ian Winston will tell you, who I think a few of us know him, a writer in Manchester. He grew up in what they call a BBC house, where they were not allowed to watch ITV. So Ian Winterton and all of the people who weren't allowed to watch ITV would be all right. Which probably includes Nigel Neal. So
I don't know. He hated the BBC by this point, I think.
Yes, he did. But I'm sure he hated the adverts and slumming it on ITV as well.
Well, although I know you, Peter, are a fan of Nigel Neal's TV show called Beasts.
Oh yeah, I did. Well, that was through Steve. In fairness, I haven't seen all. I've only seen one, the one with the old cup and the rats. Right. But I know. I think you got me onto Beasts, and you've seen all those. Yeah.
Well, Beasts is a really fascinating series. For anyone who doesn't know it, it's a 1976 ITV drama, and it's an anthology series. Every episode is a different tale that involves humans interacting with animals in some way. Some of them are really weird and really good, and some of them aren't. And I kind of think that this movie, it sums up Neil in the same way that Beast does, in that there's always a fascination and a real intelligence to it, although sometimes that comes out bad. Some of the episodes of Beasts are really terrible, but some are really great. And I kind of think the Halloween 3 is kind of the same. For instance, I think that it's an absolutely amazing idea, but I don't think he's really put himself in the American situation. Lots of American fans kind of pointed out the fact that this would never work as a scheme. There's too many time zones in America. The adverts would go out all at different times. And, things like that. When I spoke with Howard about it, and Steve Timms, in our earlier recording for the podcast, I feel like I wasn't positive enough about it, because Howard was very good at pointing out all the flaws in the movie, and I think that it's kind of hard to argue with. I think the movie's really entertaining. I agree with you, Peter. I just think it's fun, and it is at no point boring. Even the bits that are kind of bad and unnecessary kind of keep your interest.
There's a breeziness to it. The line that I laughed about is Cochrane's having such good fun with it when he goes. He talks about how the stone, again, he shows, he goes, you wouldn't believe what we had to go through to get this here. He smiles and walks off, and that's it. No other explanation required. I kind of like that.
Yeah. It presupposes that the audience is going to take that step into suspension of disbelief.
They know
just assumes they're along for the ride.
Yeah. On the other hand, she's so brilliantly rubbish. The main girl in it.
Oh, do you think she's rubbish?
Yeah,
Stacey Nelkin.
Pretty lightweight, and the fact that he just magically finds her strapped to a table and then she doesn't say a word and doesn't blink or anything.
Well, that's the point.
Yeah, but she's just there to turn up for that one scene in the car.
I know, and that's I don't think that's the actress's fault. I think that's a writing problem. And watching it,
stereotypical. That's the noir film archetype. She's the quintessential femme fatale. She comes in and she basically takes him down the rabbit hole.
Oh, that's
but she doesn't stop him from ruining the plans. She can just push him over the balcony at any point.
Oh no, there are plot holes.
Yeah, it's a huge plot hole. Steve,
she bungles it. I mean, she goes to there's a scene where she sees a car, and I know it's because you need that plot device to get the bad guys onto them.
Yeah,
which was, that's my dad's car, and draws attention to it while all his men are watching him.
Yeah,
it was like. I can see why you did it.
I think she is the main problem in the film, for me, honest, because I said to you, we had a chuckle on the sofa where they go to bed, and I said, well, everyone handles grieving in a different way.
Yeah, that's a huge problem.
Yeah.
Well, I think that was so typical of. See, what would be interesting to know is that with that script, what was so typical of that was. So it was a horror movie, and then they go, well, we've got to have a sex scene, and that was the formula. So there'd be a lot of formula things. So now it would be nice. Was that in the script, or was it pressure from a studio saying we need this, or was it a director going, well, we need that? It would be interesting, hear from them, saying what was in that script. Was the pressure from the studio going, well, you've got to have a sex scene, we've got to have a bit of nudity, because this is aimed at a younger market.
Isn't it? Yeah,
so that's that thing. There's certain bits in it where it's like, well, the good guy's got to be like this, and it's like ticking all the boxes, and that's the danger sometimes when it's, because obviously that was
that would have a decent, not a ridiculously massive budget, but a good budget. And that's the problem with if it's part of a studio system, is like they want product and they think, well, we've got to have this, got to have that. It's they say, no, let's go the other way. And what was great about this was it was trying to go the other way, but you felt like we need that there, we need this death scene. Oh, she's got to have a drill in her head.
But I'd love to know how much John Carpenter actually had an influence on it,
because he was the producer, isn't he?
Yeah, but you know, as the creator of the franchise, I mean, he's not got a writing credit per se, but he must have had a hand in certain decisions.
He chose not to have a credit for writing it, but it is stated by Tommy Lee Wallace that the script is co-authored by him and Carpenter from Nigel Neal's original. So he's definitely got a lot in there. Also, the basic direction of it, the whole idea of it not being a Michael Myers movie came from Carpenter and Hill. Yeah. And it is said, I haven't seen this enough for it to be corroborated, but it is said that when they were basically sued, they were strong-armed into doing Halloween 2, they didn't want to do it.
Right.
And when they did that, they said that the deal they made was, okay, we'll do Halloween 2 for you, but when we do Halloween 3, we want complete control of it.
And was the idea, because was this the idea of they were going to do different completely, so the year after for Halloween they could do something about a vampire, and they were going to do completely different horror themed
it was like
stories.
They'd get a different writer and director every year, and Carpenter would give them an idea. Apparently the idea he gave to Nigel Neal was do something about witchcraft in the computer age.
Right, okay.
Which I think Nigel Neal actually did.
Yeah, really good. And that holds up really now, especially with all the technology aspects.
I think in a way it might be even more credible now, because like Steve says, you wouldn't do it through TV, you'd do it through Wi-Fi.
Get on your mobiles,
you could make it global all at the same time. Simulcast.
So, what just came into my head, I haven't seen that film in a lot of years, but the one thing what always stuck in my head was that music for the advert, which I think just shows you how powerful that is, because that was the whole point of that was like amazing. When you put this jingle on and when you watch this and that sticks in your head, that says it for a lot of things. When you think in life, you remember, well, why am I singing that tune? You've just heard it a second ago. The power of, like, there was definitely, for me anyway, there was a message that's in, like, the power of the television media, because that tune
reminds me the most of Vela. It's like the monster isn't really, like, so in Halloween 1 and 2, Michael Myers is a very visceral, human, albeit, this force of nature, antagonist, whereas in Halloween 3, I mean, Cochran is the villain as such, but technology is the real monster, and consumerism as well.
Yeah, and the greed is the hook, and the technology is the axe that will get rid
even
of
the robots are zombies, just like, we get in They Live, and you can see those themes really kind of...
It's like, we'll give you what you want more, well, we'll give it to you, but there'll be a price.
In a way, the film itself is like a metaphor for that, because I think the kind of zombie characters, the besooted henchmen killers, I'd love to read Nigel Neal's script firstly to see if they're in it, because I feel like they've added that because it's like they know that the audience want Michael Myers. They want a silent, slow-moving stalker killer guy, and it's like, okay, we'll give you that, but not the way you're expecting.
They're nicely competent, though, as henchmen go. I particularly like the scene where Tom Atkins has escaped from the room and one goes, right, mask, grill. There's no messing around there. The communication of that intent over a silent CCTV is and then the other guys go, right, we need to
it's
sort
like
this.
watching a public information film about the Tory party.
We'll put that on the poster.
Now, I had a question for you, Dan, because you've obviously thought about this a lot. This feels like the perfect vehicle for Carpenter. He's managed to get his most revered writer to work with him on a project for the first time. It's something fresh and new, and it's something that he's had this guaranteed creative control. So why doesn't he direct it? Why does he give it to Tommy Lee Wallace?
Was he doing Christine at the time? Christine came out that same year.
No, it's The Thing. The Thing came out.
Oh, 82, so it was 82, so The Thing.
But Dean Cundy's doing it. So
he could have done both. It's a really good question. I know that he really wanted Tommy Lee Wallace to direct because Tommy Lee Wallace was the designer and the editor of Halloween. And when they came to do Halloween 2, Carpenter wanted him to direct it, and he offered it to him. But when Tommy Lee Wallace became aware that it was going to be a studio formula movie, and they just wanted kind of the Halloween again, but more, he said, no, it's not for me. I want to do something original. Right. So Carpenter knew when Halloween 3 was coming up that Tommy Lee Wallace was into that. Having said that, Tommy Lee Wallace wasn't the original director. Joe Dante was the original director.
Yeah, is that so?
That one, yeah.
It's a very Dante
film,
film,
actually. Yeah, you could imagine. If you said Joe Dante's director, you go, yeah, definitely. Interesting.
So I don't know really.
It's an odd one for him to pass on because, you know, having put all these ingredients in place, he's not going to be messed with. He's got his script, he's got his writer, he's got creative control, budget control. To then say, I'm not going to do it, feels like an odd decision.
I think maybe he just kind of was so invested in The Thing, which he still loves the most of all the movies he made.
Yeah.
And you know, obviously Dean Cundey could probably do those 2 movies in 1 year. Because the nature of his job is just on and off.
Maybe
but
you're onto something there, Dan, because having watched and read lots of stuff about The Thing, I know he was shattered by the critical panning and the box office failure of The Thing, and maybe that cracked his confidence at just the wrong moment where he couldn't put himself back in the chair for that.
Do we know why? Because obviously when this came out, because I'm sure it did well at the box office, but it didn't do as well as they were expecting. I was just wondering why they didn't do another like Halloween with this idea what Carpenter had. It'll be a completely different story, like a year or 2 after, because it was about 88 when Halloween 4 came out, and lo and behold, it was back to Michael Myers and all this.
I think the pushback just against the fact that Michael Myers wasn't in it.
Was
it not?
Basically,
the backlash was mainly that.
It's the financier, isn't it? I guess, and the producer.
It's really weird because it was considered a massive flop and a disaster at the time, despite the fact that its budget was $2.5 million, and its US box office receipts came to $14.5 million.
Which is really good because they reckon, so if it costs, what was it, $2.5 million. Yeah, so they reckon to like recoup its cost, they have to make about $5 million, so it easily made its money back. So that's why I was really surprised they didn't go, well, there's still hope in
But apparently, possibly most of the money that it did make was on the opening weekend when nobody knew what it was like, and the word of mouth afterwards was horrible that people hated it.
It's a cheeky tagline though, you know. The night I love the night no one came home, but it does unfortunately also link it to Halloween.
Yeah,
I think it links the films really well. I think it's not an accident that it starts in a hospital and then moves away. Just Halloween 2 finished in a hospital. Similarly, the way that they've got the pumpkin at the beginning, it's obviously a callback to the previous Halloween films, but it's done differently. It's very much a case of it's foreshadowing the technology, like the aspect.
But would it be interesting to think if that was released, it wasn't called Halloween 3, and it was called, the night they came home, or something ridiculous like Death Mask or something. Nigel Neal would probably hate that one. Death Mask. Well, this is the thing. You've got this conflict. If someone was in marketing, they know they could sell that. Going like you get a post with these masks and go, Death Mask. Which one will you choose? Or something. I know. So what? Yes. Well, we'll do a northern version of this. We'll call it Death Mask.
What do you think of the better aspect of them having Halloween, the film, in the film itself?
Yeah.
I always thought that was genius because it's almost like that's make believe. This is your world,
and for them that was really such a rarity because now you probably get that more. But for them, that was probably one of the first movies that did that little cheeky wink scene.
He does it with the Thing in Halloween.
Doesn't
he?
Yeah, but he hadn't made the Thing.
But it's in his head though, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think that I want to do.
Well, it's a lovely little touch that, and then they bring it back again towards the end where.
Well, and the way when Cochrane says "Happy Halloween" and the Halloween music kicks in, it's just great. But I think you're right, Dan. It's like because it's there in the movie, it shifts the universe. You know that you're not watching the sequel. It's another take on the idea.
I thought it'd make a nice Black Mirror. That also came to me watching this. You can edit that tightly down to 50 minutes and it'd make a lovely Black Mirror.
And I think Black Mirror is very much Charlie Brooker being Nigel Neal. Yeah. And it always has been.
It's a bit Twilight Zone-y as well, you can say that.
Everything from the defeat of Cochrane on is a bit rubbish. And that's but it's still entertaining. I mean, even the sequence at the end where Stacey Nelkin attacks you and falls to bits, I think is a bit rubbish, but I do enjoy it. I think, and everything is quite well done. And I'll say this in defence of Stacey Nelkin as well. One, she was the only thing in the movie Roger Ebert liked.
Towel scene gets a particular note.
He does a great quote at the end of his review where he talks about how strong her performance is, and then says, "What a pity she does her last scene without a head." And I think her performance is really good. I think it's the way she's used in the script that is weak. But I mean, for instance, I think that the whole "I'm going to give away my father's car and make a spectacle," it works emotionally. I think, and I love the long shot. I think somebody might have, when this long shot happened and you see her go back to Chalice and she hugs it, and you could sort of see that emotion from that huge distance. And one of you guys, or one of the people who's left, kind of went, "Aww." So, although the whole thing of her being a robot at the end, but she helps him defeat Cochrane, doesn't make any sense.
I thought that she was human from the get-go, and then during that time when they got hold of her, they made her into a robot. That was the impression I always got from that. That's why I read into it. I didn't think she was a robot from the get-go.
Oh no, I think it was. It's definitely the bit. When Tom Atkins comes back to the motel and he finds she's gone, and then the guys chase her. And I think the implication is that they've taken her away at that point and made a copy of her. And it's basically the end of Invasion of the Body Snatchers remake. So when he finds her again, she's a robot now, but she still helps him defeat Cochrane's plans.
Yeah, that's flawed, isn't it? It's a terrible.
Although maybe she's not activated properly, because she is just wandering around like a little puppy dog zombie thing.
What I like is watching it, having seen it before, and knowing that she's a robot. I think her performance is subtly different in those last few scenes.
Oh, it's so subtle, Dan, mate.
Well, I don't. Obviously, she never says anything, but there's just something about the way she moves and looks at him and things that are just a bit different.
Maybe I need to watch that again.
Maybe.
Now, I had a question for you. We all laughed at Cochrane's little end, where everything goes zapped, and then he gets zapped by the blue stone and zapped by the telly. There's this incredible sort of joyous grin as he falls to pieces.
Joyous plastic latex grin.
Do you think that is what it is? It's like Cochrane has done his job now, so we don't need him in the plot, and they're just amusingly dissolving.
I think it was a bit of like, I'm still going to win because you're not going to. You might have stopped this, the factory, but
you're too late.
I've got what I've wanted. You're too late, and you're screwing a robot.
I think you might be right. I don't know, because to be honest, having only seen it on poor quality VHS before, I could never make out the expression on his face when he was killed.
He's delighted, isn't he?
I to be honest, the impression I got was, oh, they've reused the rubber mask of Ian Holm from the end of Alien when he's got that stupid grin on his face. I just didn't think.
It's a shame because because I would imagine that it got to 10 to 9. That bit, he'd be going up to his little office, he'd get his little dram of puccin out, maybe have a nice glass of goat's blood or whatever he's going to have to then watch all the news channels as everything falls apart.
Right.
I had a ridiculous idea then, where if it was studio executives and they watched that and they go, "Oh God, where's Michael Myers?" and I'd go, "Right, this is what you do." So at the very end, Tom Atkins is on the phone, he's like, "Turn it off, turn it off." He goes, "Stop, stop, stop," and then Tom Atkins wakes up. It's all a dream. And then he opens the door, Michael Myers then stabs him and goes, and then the credits roll. And then I guess there we go.
That'd be a good sell.
We've given Michael Myers
He's very persuasive, though, isn't he? In that end. That is a problem, because he's got 9 minutes or so when he gets in. The poor bugger in the petrol station again has his second madman in a week.
Yeah.
Everyone's going to be killed.
Yeah.
And then he manages to get 2 of the channels to take it off air. Just go, "No, look, I can't prove this, but everyone's going to die. I really, really don't show this."
But he can convince those 2 broadcasters, but not his wife.
And they go,
okay.
Mr. Cochrane has spent multi-millions pounds, buying every advert, all the airtime. This is his big thing. But no, fuck it, we're just going to...
They must be like sort of regional, because we're like a major stations who he's getting through.
Yeah. And to be fair as well to the plot hole about them being different time zones, that would have been 3 o'clock Eastern time and something else. So they still had the giveaway.
Yeah, it was still do regardless.
You'll have to watch the Magic Pumpkin in New York at 5 in the afternoon.
To be fair, kids would have stayed up all night for Halloween if there's a special thing on it, like a telethon. And also, this is the point to add that the voice going, "It's time, kids," is Tommy Lee Wallace, if anybody didn't know that. And he's also...
Not Christopher Higgins.
It's the same voice in Halloween 1 because they're watching a horror-thon in that with The Thing and Forbidden Planet, and it's his voice on there as well.
Yeah, also, the voice, you know, when Tom Atkins is trying to get, I think it was Tom Atkins, he's trying to get through, and there's a female voice. Was that the voice on Escape from New York? And was that Deborah Hill? Because I'm sure she did. Jamie Curtis. So that was on Halloween 3 doing that.
Yeah, it's weird because at that convention that I've seen with Tommy Lee Wallace, somebody asked him that, and he said, no, it's apocryphal, but it's Jamie Lee Curtis. It's definitely Jamie Lee Curtis. You just have to listen to it.
In Halloween 3, I thought, because I was saying that's from Secret Charge.
Yeah, certainly the operator.
Yeah,
she is.
Although she may have no memory of doing it, because it was like an hour's work in 1982.
So what happened to Tommy Lee Wallace and his career then? Because he's always been sort of
Friday
Carpenter's
Night
right-hand man, hasn't
He did.
he?
Yes, as well, didn't he?
He did the TV series, yeah.
Oh yeah, that was actually really good.
So what's he up to now, Tommy? Is he just...
The last credit I'm aware of, I can see Steve's getting on the IMDb, he's probably got a good update for us. The last credit I'm aware of is he directed the sequel to John Carpenter's Vampires, which came out in 2000, and it's called Vampires Los Muertos.
Is that with John Bon Jovi?
I was not even aware that existed.
Well, there's 3.
Wow.
Yeah. I've never seen those. I really wanted to watch it when I heard that he directed it, but then I heard it was even worse than John Carpenter's Vampires.
Did he do anything for the Masters of Horror anthology? Because I know John Carpenter's Cigarette Burns is fabulous.
It's great,
that's really good.
I don't think so.
No, I didn't.
No, that's a shame.
Any credits after Vampires Los Muertos?
No, you're absolutely right. That's the last. Oh no, upcoming projects. It says something called Heliversity.
That's a great
Death. Nobody that we know of. But it's called Heliversity. And then it's a report line. No, there isn't. That's in development.
Wow. Let's end by saying something that we each really enjoyed about the movie. I'll start. One thing I realised recently is I love the fact that Carpenter made this movie and The Thing in the same year. Not just Carpenter, but Dean Cundy, Alan Howarth being involved with the music. I just think, even if you pull Halloween 3 to bits, there's so much in it that's interesting and different. It's a weird mix of a bit hokey and a sort of weird masterpiece, I think. And then you realise that The Thing was made at the same time. And I just think that's a hell of a year's work for anyone, really. And actually, even Nigel Neal kind of acknowledged that, I think, because even though he was quite bitter about Halloween 3 for a long time, and like later on in the 80s when Carpenter tried to homage him by writing Prince of Darkness under the name Martin Quatermass. Nigel Neal hated that he did that, and there was a newspaper interview where Nigel Neal said, I haven't seen this new movie, but it sounds pretty bad, dismissing it completely. But I think in the last years of his life, Nigel Neal kind of mellowed, and he did say in one interview, I think with a Channel 4 series called SF UK, he said that he didn't like what happened to Halloween 3, but he didn't really blame John, and John was very busy on The Thing, and Nigel Neal was a fan of The Thing, actually, which was, I guess, pretty unique in 1982, anyway. So that's the thing I love about the movie. Dan, have you got anything else you'd like to note?
I genuinely think that struck me the most was the score. I think it's one of Carpenter's. I wasn't the only person behind it, but I think it's one of his, not lesser known, but I think it's a genuine masterpiece from Carpenter. There's no standout tracks that you know as iconic as the Halloween 1 theme, but I think in terms of the atmosphere it brings to the film, it's really, really great. It's the kind of thing you could probably stick on and just listen to throughout, and you have a really great time with it. Yeah, I think the score's fantastic.
I'm so glad you said that, because I thought that's the only thing we've not really talked enough about was the music. I do think the music, which is apparently half composed, like literally one track will be by John Carpenter and the next by Alan Howarth. I think it's how they did it. And yeah, I do think it's a fantastic, eerie, quirky. This movie and watching Halloween 1 made me realise that Carpenter is really good at scoring dialogue or scoring speeches, because the iconic scene in Halloween 1 where Donald Pleasance talks about the boy with the blackened eyes, the music is so great in that. And every moment in this movie that Dan O'Hurley has like drops a meaningful few lines and the music comes in. My favourite bit, I think for good reason, many people cite Dan O'Hurley's big the Festival of Samhain speech as a highlight of the movie, and I think it is. But I also love the bit where Tom Atkins has just pulled the head off that automata woman, and Dana Hurley picks it up. Yes, a rare piece, German. Yeah. And there's something about his voice and the way the music comes in. You kind of want him to carry on. You want him to tell you loads more about the history of this. It's just so perfectly done, I think, and hypnotic, and I think that's a lovely quality.
There's a simple moment in the title screen where it's like the digital pumpkin that's falling in the eyes, and the music goes along with the little pixels being
That's really effective.
Yeah, and I think what's interesting is that I think the music was composed without the sort of pixel notes, and then when they saw the animation, they went and added in the kind of stuff. Yeah. But I think it keeps in key. Yeah. It's just a really effective kind of opening.
Yeah. I'm so glad Black Lace didn't, because they were originally going to do the score. The Source Sense. So thank goodness the Carpenter and Alan Howarth.
We could do
It's Alan Howarth, isn't it?
It is Alan Howarth. Yes. We could do a fan supercut. Put it on YouTube.
That'd be funny. Yeah.
the original Black Lace score.
Yeah. That's right.
How about you, Gemma? Is there anything that stands out about the movie that you mentioned?
I just think it's, like you say, really atmospheric. I think the music's excellent in it. I love the mask. I just love everything about it, and I love the bit where he throws the mask on the CCTV camera. What would happen if it had not gone on there? What would he have done? Yeah, I just think it's. Yeah, I just really enjoy it, and it just kind of very nostalgic as well. Watching it again.
Oh, fantastic. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Anything else from you, Gareth?
Yeah, I mean, it's great hearing everyone talk about it and some reflection. I think something that you said, Dan, is really stuck with me since you said it, is there's so much here that ideas he's trying out for the first time, like the idea of evil and things hidden in technology, which is in They Live, the whole anti-capitalist message and that sort of genial, slightly evil capitalist overlord, and all the things that he'll revisit appear here for the first time. So this is almost the first rung of his escape ladder from corporate Hollywood, which is treating him quite badly at that time, and will continue to treat him quite shoddily until he gets out of it and goes back to indie. So I think it's a very important and overlooked film, but there's a lot in there that he will come back to and refine.
I think it does stand as not the lost, but the additional Carpenter film. Not to take away from Tommy Lee Wallace, who I think does a fine job directing it, but I think you can tell that he's Carpenter's protege, and combined with Dean Cundey,
it is a bit Carpenter's greatest hits in some ways. That's the negative thing. Like, for instance, like the henchmen guys, the way they'll suddenly appear in shot, and then there's a sting, and then they're lit in a particular way, which is almost exactly the way that Wilfred Bramley appears at bits later on in the thing. It's almost sort of shot for shot, score for score, and there's nothing wrong with that, because I think it's perfectly pleasurable, but it's a shame that it lacks the confidence to be something fresh in the way that They Live is very fresh.
Yeah.
5 years later.
Steve?
Above all, the fantastic line with Tom Atkins screams, "It's time to get the Marines in." Something almost just fantastic.
Midway through a slug of whiskey.
Some boys getting sugar on t-shirts. If I say it was an interesting failure, would I be in trouble? Would I piss people off?
No, if
I reckon, yeah.
Interesting failure or flawed genius, but I think it basically pisses on a lot of successes, and I think the movie is going to stay with me, and it's all the interesting stuff that you've also about Nigel Neal being involved as well. It's been very educational, and I think I've overlooked this film for so many years now. It was on to see it today.
7-year-old Steve was onto something.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you got to see it for the first time in widescreen, uncut. I'd never seen that before.
Did your mum undersell it?
My mum made it sound really awesome. It's sang with a tune as well.
Right.
You tune.
You know what I noticed this time was in the big sequence at the end where all the kids in all the different states filmed in Los Angeles are all buying the masks, and you hear the full tune, and like towards the end it has this really kind of nice tweet.
like fluty bit. I'd never noticed that before, and I love the kind of craft of that and the black humour of it. The kind of 3 more days till Halloween. That actually is kind of a bit annoying.
And they keep singing it when he goes round to the house. Which is brilliant, because that's exactly what it's done its job.
Well, yeah,
it's in there.
And then it just stick. But then the thing is, in real life, it does stick with you. That's what I'm saying. That's the one thing I always remember that film is that tune, which is very powerful.
It's almost like you went, God, that's so annoying. It's perfect.
It's perfect. It's going to stick in your head. Anyone who's seen that film, and I bet the majority of people will go, and they'll start humming it, and they will know it instantly. Or if you put an image up of those masks, you go, oh, that's Halloween 3. So those masks in themselves, like the Michael Myers masks, they've become pretty iconic in one way, along with Tom Atkins' his moustache.
We've got to say thank you to Dave, a connoisseur of Halloween 3, for bringing us together and all these wonderful
artists. No, absolutely. Thank you so much.
The best screening I've ever been to.
Definitely. Dave, is there anything different in the book? Because the books are quite often based on earlier drafts of the scripts.
I remember there was a scene in there where the Kupfer family are given an award, because that's why they're there, basically. They're basically there they've sold the most masks in the region, so they're collecting an award. And they're awarded a shield or something like that.
Right.
But it's not in the film. But there is a scene in the film, I think it's as they're walking from inside the factory outside onto the sort of balcony towards the final processing door. And you can see them holding, I think the kid's holding something. You can see the kid holding what looks like a shield. So back when I was proper obsessed with this film, about 12 years ago, or 13 years ago, I actually emailed Brad Schachter, who was the actor who played Little Buddy, and asked him could he remember anything about this. And he said he remembers a scene where there was some applause, but he wasn't 100% because he was probably 7 or 8 or something.
In America, it's not a proper release over yet, like a special edition, but in America there's the Shout Factory. Is there any like deleted scenes on that or anything? There's no... Because it just feels like when you watch it, it's like, I wonder if scenes have been... Because there's a talk of a bit, what was it, the father's funeral, which says thanks for coming to the funeral. Yeah. And you do wonder, like, sometimes, was there a bit more at the funeral and stuff like that, if there's any more scenes?
It's a shame they missed out the shield bit, because actually that's even more cold, like an evil bastard Cochrane has invited them there with his wicked sense of humour, so he's going to give him a talk, give him a shield.
Yeah, I think this is good.
Now while you're here, you're going to value your opinions, lock. Yeah, 8 more days to Halloween, and
I seem to remember there was more time spent with him picking out the masks for the kids, the rubbish plastic masks.
There is, because I've not read this, but on YouTube, there's a guy on YouTube who reads novelisations of horror movies in their entirety for you to listen to, and there is Halloween 3 on there. And I've listened to the first sort of chapter or so, and it has him going to the shop to buy them. And it's actually quite lengthy. It's all about how much he knows that his wife's going to be angry with him, and he's got to desperately get his kids a present, and he just happens to go into a shop. I think he wants to buy them some kind of cool game, but then realises he can't afford it, so he just buys them Halloween masks. So in the script, I think the original script, he buys them the silver shamrock masks, and he gets home and finds that the mother has bought them normal masks, whereas then they changed it around for the shooting so that she's bought them the shamrock masks because they didn't want him to be the villain by buying them the lethal masks. As a final note then, you may all be aware, I don't know if you are, that originally this movie wasn't called Halloween 3 Season of the Witch. When Nigel Neal wrote the script, apparently on the front page it just says Halloween 3 working title because he couldn't be bothered to come up with a title for it. Tommy Lee Wallace named it Season of the Witch based on a Donovan song that he likes. My question to each of you is, what would you have named it? I think we've already got your suggestion.
Death Mask. that's the whole studio suggestion.
Mine would be The Halloween 3. Because the reason there's 3 masks in it is because Nigel Neal was clever, and when it's Halloween 3 there should be a 3 thing in it, so just call it The Halloween 3 or
Mask of Halloween.
Go on, Steve.
My rubbish one, I thought, except I call it Shamrock, but I wanted rubbish like you said to come. I wanted a big giveaway. might have been
The big giveaway.
That sounds like a game show.
Well, no, that I think that'll be good. And actually, the unmade TV series that Nigel Neal kind of took part of the ideas for this from was called The Big Giggle. It was about a TV show aimed at teenagers that was like a comedy show, but it killed them. So that's quite a Nigel Neal-y title, I think.
Just to interject, I think I remember that. It made them kill themselves.
Oh, that was
it made
it,
them
that was
commit
it.
suicide, and they were.
That's interesting.
I think it was in the 60s. I think you mentioned the 70s. I'm sure it was. When I read years back, it was the 60s, and it was. The BBC were terrified of being responsible for a spate of suicides amongst, depressed teenagers or something. So.
Yeah, that makes sense. Any other great titles? I'm going to force you to just come up with someone off the top of your head. Dan.
Halloween 3, Maya's Light.
Gemma?
I don't know. Terrifying Trio. I don't.
Could be nice. Anything, Gareth?
No, the title's the problem. I think if it's not called Halloween 3, it doesn't get made. Because it's called Halloween 3, it dies very quickly and kills off the anthology idea. So you can see that Sam Hain, maybe, you could have kept coming up with a different
name
Halloween-y kind of festival, but it's a bit weak, really.
Yeah, and there is now, I think, a straight-to-video franchise called Sam Hain.
Yeah. John Carpenter presents Sam Hain would probably be about the strongest hand, but yeah, it's a problem.
And how about you, Dave? What do you think the title should be?
Well, okay, I'll admit I think I nicked this from online, saw it suggested online in a forum probably 10 years ago, but did you see the homeless guy? I think it was Starker, his name is in the film. He goes, wanders off shouting, "This is going to be the last Halloween, damn you, Cochrane, this is going to be the last Halloween." So I think I've seen a lot of online support for the last Halloween. I know you suggested. I know you suggested the Halloween 3.
Yeah, I know
that was, I think, Kim Newman's suggestion. Wasn't it on the?
He does mention it on the commentary.
Maybe?
He certainly says that this is the Halloween 3, and they're in the script because Nigel Neal did write the first ever sequel. Literally, the first ever sequel that had a number in it, which was Quatermass 2. And that movie has a rocket in it called Quatermass 2 because he obviously thought it can't just be the number of the film. There's got to be a logical reason for it. So he created that whole Hollywood trend.
Back in the 70s, you had things like Airport 70. Was it Airport 75?
Yes.
How about Halloween 83? If the idea was going to be
that would have been better.
Every year there's going to be a brand new edition, if you like. You could have Halloween 83,
like
Halloween
American
84.
Horror Story.
Tom Atkins versus Halloween.
So, hello again everyone, it's Dan here, present day Dan in 2020, once again joined by Kirsty.
Hello.
Smashing. So I hope everybody enjoyed that very, very in-depth look at a rather interesting film. I think we probably won't have to say anything else about that film ever again. I think it's possibly all been said. So I don't know about the listener, but I feel purged. We had some recommendations last week of films that were coming up on streaming and on UK TV and things like that. And also, Kirsty, you had a recommendation for a short film.
I did.
An untitled short film by the director Rob Savage, which is available online and which we included a link to it in our post for our previous episode. I've now watched it.
I listened to you watch it.
Well, so you did. And so I want to say thank you.
It's okay.
And also, oh my God. So, wow, that was amazing. This short film it's a lockdown-based piece of horror fiction. It's only about 2 minutes long, but it's really incredibly effective. I know, Kirsty, that you're very familiar with Rob's work because he used to be one of your students.
Yeah.
So I wonder if you want to tell us a little more about the film.
Yeah, well, I mean, I can only really kind of just elaborate on the kind of very vague discussion that happened, I think, last week, and we talked about some of his other work. But what was weird is as we were kind of discussing, and I discovered it last week, which I think was Wednesday afternoon, it kind of catapulted into the kind of realms of viral kind of notoriety very shortly after, and was picked up by kind of places like Unilad and the AV Club, and they were kind of reporting on it, and then
The Daily Mirror, I think, did something.
Yes,
about
the Daily
it
Mirror as well, or Mirror Online, I think, also picked up on it and very much kind of framed it as, kind of guy pranks his friends on Zoom.
Yeah, so basically, for anyone who's not seen it, I'll just sum it up very quickly as saying it's a horror film based around a Zoom call, because that's life at the moment. If you haven't seen it, go watch it, because I'm pretty sure that Kirsty and I will spoil it very quickly, because it is only about 2 minutes long. There's not a lot to discuss, but it is worth discussing, and it is available for free online, so I'd strongly encourage anyone to go watch it. It scared the hell out of me. I have to say, I think you can vouch for that, Kirsty.
Yeah, I can. I heard it.
So, the Daily Mirror in that article framed it as a prank that he played, because it's basically I guess the narrative of the film is a bunch of friends talking on Zoom.
Yeah.
And one of them says, "I've been hearing noises from my attic," and they encourage him to go and look in the attic in case it's whatever it is. And he goes, and something grabs him, and it's quite shocking. But the way the Daily Mirror framed it was that they said it was actually a prank, that Rob, being a filmmaker, he'd set it all up and played this prank on his friends.
Yeah.
And it does kind of seem a bit like that when you watch it, because their reactions seem very spontaneous and genuine. But I'm assuming that they were all acting and it was all scripted.
Well, actually.
Okay.
So Rob had, so if you look at his kind of Twitter feed and stuff, he, kind of even up to kind of beginning of lockdown, kind of starts laying this idea of kind of hearing things in the attic as sort of, kind of to lay the groundwork. And one of the things that he did kind of on social media after the kind of film was he shared a sort of trial run that he'd done with his girlfriend.
Oh, okay.
Who is, who they are, kind of currently separated in physically, not obviously romantically.
Right.
But as a sort of kind of trial run. So she's involved in she's another filmmaker called Kate Herron. She's one of the kind of the members of the kind of Zoom call. And the rest I understand are kind of Rob's friends. So it is a prank in that. I think, from what I understand, most of them, if not all of them, except for Kate, didn't know. Although, if you're friends with Rob, he's a horror director, and, there's a kind of, I think there's certainly kind of few of them who are like, yeah, is this real?
Yeah.
So, the kind of reactions are, genuine. But what's interesting about it is that actually the kind of the moment, the jump scare bit is actually taken from another film, which is, have you seen Wreck, the Spanish kind of...
Yes, I recently watched it.
The Thing, I don't want to say anymore.
Okay.
It's actually taken from that film.
Right.
And kind of cut in. So again, he's not been terribly, I think, forthcoming about the actual construction of it. But there's, I know there was some discussion about at a certain point he starts kind of putting in a kind of pre-recorded feed into the Zoom call rather than it being live.
Right.
So these are questions to be asked, but certainly, it's kind of, beautifully timed for the beginning of this podcast, I think, and there's, certainly kind of raised his profile. He's also, kind of he's done. I was talking last week. He's done lots of shorts. He's moving more into television. So he directed an episode of, I think, the Channel 4 series. I think it's called True Horror. A couple of years ago.
All right.
And he did the last few episodes of Sky's second season of Britannia with David Morrissey. And he's now, I think, working on or developing, will be working as a director, I think, as part of an AMC anthology series, which I believe is called Soulmates or something like that. Apologies, Rob, if you listen and I've got it wrong. So you certainly want to keep an eye on. I think.
Good on Rob. No, it's a brilliant piece of work.
Yeah.
And possibly frightened me even more than Wreck did. Because Wreck is pretty frightening.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm really interested by the... I don't even really know the technical craft that would go into feeding pre-recorded material into a Zoom call, but making it seamless, so that the people on the other end of the call wouldn't know that they were no longer seeing live.
Yeah, like I said, I'm not entirely
great.
sure but that was certainly kind of an impression that I got.
It's brilliantly edited
Yeah.
in terms of the pace of everybody's reaction and the way that, you know, it cuts from one close-up to another and from a point-of-view shots and things like that. Just perfectly done. By the way, I think, unless you know one, I think this film doesn't have a title, does it? I think we should say that.
No, I don't think it does have a title at the moment.
Just kind of exists as a thing, which is probably quite appropriate, really.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I think it's wonderful. And
But I think this clearly has this kind of found footage, you know, approach in terms of, you know, here's a character with a camera and they are recording. But increasingly, of course, that kind of found footage, those kind of tropes have been, you know, are being reinterpreted for sort of social media age. Films that I've not seen Searching.
No, I really wanted to see that. I feel like it was almost not released in this country, in the UK.
Yeah, I think it's on Sky Movies or
Right.
Now TV if you have the movie package.
Okay.
But certainly it was. But so it's going to be interesting to sort of see how those, you know, kind of tropes of, you know, found footage horror of people with video cameras, you know, kind of are increasingly fed through this social media kind of lens. Oh, there was Unfriended as well, wasn't there?
There was, but Unfriended was kind of, the reviews were a little bit underwhelmed, and I feel like it was trying to use that medium as a cash-in.
Yeah.
So I wasn't really that interested in checking it out, but the things that I read about Searching suggested that it actually used the kind of found footage via social media angle in a cinematically interesting way that kind of worked as a thriller. So I'd really like to see that. And yeah, it's not a horror film. But, you know, it's a thriller, so it'd be suspenseful and tense, and I'd love to see how those formal elements are kind of used in the film to tell a story and to keep you involved.
Particularly through the way in which a kind of fixed position within the kind of formal execution of the film, the perspective of the camera, you know, might create something more like a kind of distance between, you know, us as a viewer and the kind of characters on screen. But, you know, I think it'll clearly become more of a thing, won't it? And I think the kind of, you know, it depends on how long the kind of lockdown goes on for, but I think we can expect to see more filmmakers kind of drawing on the kind of anxieties of lockdown and the kind of way in which we're able to connect with each other on social media as a kind of space for, you know, kind of thrilling and horrific narratives.
Yeah, I think we are going to see much more of that. And I think that it's interesting because it's a direct opposition to the way that technology has kind of been leading film. You know, I think because cameras and lighting equipment have become so much more compact and advanced, the camera tends to move a lot in films. There's a lot of handheld stuff, whereas you kind of switching to a medium where by nature the camera has to be fixed. Can't follow the characters around, so that's going to lead to its own kind of development of, you know, the tropes of horror.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, thanks for that recommendation, Kirsty.
It's okay.
So, on that note, let's think about any recommendations we have of stuff that people can access in the next week or so. I tend to draw my recommendations from the Horror Channel, so apologies to any listeners outside of the UK. I guess these recommendations are only really useful to UK-based listeners who've got Freeview. On the Horror Channel on Monday the 4th of May, in the middle of the night, so it's about 2:30. So actually, technically, I suppose it's the morning of Tuesday the 5th. There is the 1958 film Revenge of Frankenstein, The Revenge of Frankenstein, starring Peter Cushing. As Kirsty knows, and the listener will have gathered by now, I love Peter Cushing movies. This is a really good one. It's the first sequel to The Curse of Frankenstein, which came out in 1957, which was the original kind of gothic horror movie hit from Hammer Studios. You don't really need to have seen The Curse of Frankenstein to get The Revenge of Frankenstein. It's a really good story on its own. It's beautifully made. But if you do happen to be an Amazon Prime subscriber, The Curse of Frankenstein is on Amazon Prime at the moment. So you could possibly have a little bit of a double bill of those. They're very satisfying movies. They're both written by Jimmy Sangster and directed by Terence Fisher, and they're low-budget filmmaking, but just absolutely luscious, beautifully photographed by Jack Asher, both movies, and they're both kind of interesting, different takes on the kind of Frankenstein story. Obviously Frankenstein, the Mary Shelley novel, is possibly the most adapted, most influential text of all time. It's been made into so many movies, but Curse of Frankenstein is probably my favourite version of it. And The Revenge of Frankenstein is kind of a spin on it. It kind of uses some ideas from the book that they didn't use in their version of the original story. Like the creature in Shelley's story is an articulate, kind of tragic figure, whereas in a lot of the movies, including Curse of Frankenstein, it's more of a monster. But in Revenge of Frankenstein, they bring the tragedy element back. The creature is very movingly played by an actor called Michael Gwynn. Both films have an absolutely searing, beautiful performance by Cushing. His version of Baron Frankenstein is one of the most interesting sort of anti-heroes. Well, he's not an anti-hero, he's a villain. He's a horrible person in Cushing's interpretation. But the movies kind of revolve around this villainous figure, and there's something kind of compelling about him and attractive about him, despite the fact that he's horrible. I think that's really interesting and makes the films fascinating. I think he gets to show several sides of that character in those two movies, and there are loads of other great performances in them as well. They're timeless. So I'd strongly recommend Revenge if you can see it, and if you have Amazon Prime and you can watch Curse beforehand, that's even better. They are genuinely a great double bill, and they're quite short films because they are from the 50s. Only about an hour and 20 minutes, but they're in full colour and they're just basically works of art, in my opinion. So, hopefully that was fulsome enough as recommendations go.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, actually, you've convinced me. I'm going to find them on the schedule and record them. One of the things that I found over the last sort of couple of weeks ago is I just discovered, have you seen Talking Pictures TV?
Oh yes, it's wonderful. Yeah,
isn't it? And it's quite, I have to say, quite soothing. So if you're not familiar with Talking Pictures TV, it's a kind of British film channel that very much kind of specialises in showing very kind of old films and kind of
lots of old TV as well.
Yes, and absolutely. But I found there's a kind of quiet, lulling nostalgia of kind of sitting with a cup of tea and am I cross-stitching and watching some of these films, or just having them on in the background. So I think I might kind of find those two and sort of maybe slightly up my game, maybe slightly less lulling, but your descriptions of the beauty of those films are certainly very enticing.
Oh,
it's interesting, just you talking about the kind of the way in which kind of Cushing's Baron Frankenstein is kind of compelling, but obviously kind of despicable. And one of my first picks is just looking through Netflix and looking at what's available and what I might recommend to people who've not seen it before. So Netflix has not at all to link to last week's recommendation. Jonathan Demme's Silence of the Lambs is on. So again, if you've not seen that film, or if you've not seen it in a while, I would suggest that Locked is a perfect time to revisit Anthony Hopkins' version of Hannibal Lecter, and obviously Jodie Foster, who is amazing in that film. So that's up there. I didn't know it was. The other film I picked out, which I love as a horror fan and a fan of horror cinema, I love Drew Goddard and Joss Whedon's The Cabin in the Woods. Have you seen?
Oh, you know what? I've been wanting to watch The Cabin in the Woods since it was made, and I never have. I've got it recorded.
You should.
I so need to see it, but I think I've been saving it. Some people have described it as maybe the best horror film of the last decade.
Well, I think it's a divisive film. I think what I found is that people either love it or they hate it, and it kind of. For me, it doesn't matter which way you respond, but I think it's a really clever film if you're a fan of horror, because it's clearly all about horror films, about different types of horror films, about how horror operates. And And ultimately, what's kind of the ending is a kind of little bit out there and a little bit oblique, but I think ultimately kind of offers a bit of a commentary on why we need horror in our lives, why we need kind of horror films, what sociological need it fulfills. So, but it is hilarious, very, very funny. And in the middle of it all, it is Bradley Whitford and Richard Jenkins.
Oh, yes.
Delivering very Joss Whedon dialogue, and it's utterly ridiculous and very funny, and quite horrific in times. And you know, if you're a fan of horror, you'll probably sit there and kind of go, "Oh yeah, that's a reference to that and to that and to that." You know, kind of picking out all the way it's nodding towards different horror films.
I think it's about time that I did it.
So, in that vein as well, I'd like to just jump on the back of that and looking on Amazon Prime. Amazon Prime has 13 seasons of Supernatural. So if you've not done that and you have the time, then it might be a good time for you to kind of acquaint yourself with Supernatural. So Supernatural, for those of you who don't know, which I'm sure probably a few people, not many, was an American network television show sort of born out of the kind of death of Buffy, in that, you know, it kind of arose as just as Buffy, or just shortly after Buffy ended. And so it's very much kind of going after that slightly kind of young adult teen audience. It's about two brothers who are kind of demon hunters, and they travel around America fighting demons and stuff. Kind of 14 seasons allows them to cover a lot of ground and to tackle some quite big subjects. But I think the earlier seasons for me are the most joyful, in that they are, you know, a monster a week, you know, kind of often knowing nods to, you know, kind of films from horror's canon. Some episodes are bizarre, some are hilarious, and some are absolutely creepy.
Okay.
So if you're not familiar with Supernatural, I would recommend that, you know, it would be a good time to start.
I did start watching it when it was new-ish.
Yeah.
And I thought it was okay. Maybe because of the Monster of the Week thing, which I do appreciate. I actually prefer kind of dramas that give you individual stories rather than long-running arcs as a rule. But I just kind of let it go a bit easily. I don't think I got through the first season. So to kind of is there an episode that you would recommend that kind of would get me back into it, or that just needs to be seen?
Well, there were so many actually, but there's one really early on. As I always say, really, I think it might be sort of season 3, season 4, which is sort of around about the time of the writer's strike. If you remember the writer's strike.
Oh right, yeah.
Which is called. Let me see if I can find it. I think it's the episode itself kind of focuses on a kind of sort of faux, slightly jokey ghost hunting team, which is not our ghost hunting team, but a kind of group of nerds who are doing a sort of most haunted thing, and the episode is called, I want to say it's called it's called Ghost Faces.
Right. Okay.
Ghost Faces. It's really funny. It's clearly a kind of take on, you know, that kind of type of reality television, and then it goes to something quite dark as well. So that's one I would strongly recommend.
I shall check that out. I shall add that to my lockdown rotation.
Yes.
Oh, brilliant, Kirsty. Oh, and I agree wholeheartedly with your recommendation of Silence of the Lambs as well. I've been wanting to rewatch that for, years and years, and just never got round to it. I think it's a film that I've seen a lot, but I really would like to read the book and then watch the film again. A few years ago, I read the book of the precursor, Red Dragon, and really enjoyed that. So I thought I really need to read the sequel novel and then look at the film again.
Yeah, I mean, there's some really great this is one of the great things I think if you're interested in film in a digital media age, is YouTube is, you know, fantastic for, you know, video essays, deconstructions of films, and there's some really lovely ones of Silence of the Lambs in terms of its use of editing, particularly.
Yeah, it's a meticulously crafted film, isn't it? So
yeah.
So thank you very much, Kirsty. I think that brings us to the end of the show.
Thank you.
What a pleasure it's been once again. So We'll be back here next week, and next week we're going to be joined by our friend Stella. She made a contribution to last week's episode in the form of recorded material, but this time she'll be joining us live, and we're going to be doing the first of a series of episodes that we discussed before, where we'll be discovering or rediscovering movies that we should have seen or should know better than we do. And in this case, it's going to be Dario Argento's Suspiria from 1977, which I have never seen. And also we'll be talking about its more recent remake. I think, Kirsty, you said you'd seen it a long time ago, but can't remember much.
Well, vague recollections.
Right, okay. And I think Stella's in the same boat. So we're all going to dive into Suspiria over the next few days and then come back and talk about it next week. And
Very
I'm
exciting.
We'll say goodbye then. For once again, I'm TD Velasquez, although you can call me Dan.
And I'm Kirsty Warrow. Just, you can call me Kirsty.
It's our pleasure. We'll see you here, or you'll hear us here next week. Bye-bye.
Indeed. Bye.
You have been listening to And Now the Podcast Starts. Produced and released by Ambidextrous Solutions Limited. Presented by Kirsty Warrow, T.D. Velasquez, and Howard Whittock. With special guests Steve Timms, Spider Dan, Dave Moore, Daniel Butt, Gemma Taylor, Gareth Kavanagh, Steve Kane, and Peter Slater. Special thanks to Greg Hume for our original theme music, and to Brian Gorman for our original artwork. All dialogue and music clips from films, TV shows, and trailers are used for the purposes of criticism, in the spirit of fair dealing as defined in UK law, and fair use as defined in US law. No copyright infringement is intended. Please visit our home on the web, www.andnowpodcast.com, for more content and contact details. Or visit our Facebook pages at AndNowPod or at Lee Cushing Pod. Follow us on Twitter at AndNowPodcast or at Lee Cushing Podcast. If you'd like to donate to us, please visit patreon.com/AndNowPodcast. And now the podcast stops.